Testing 1, 2, checking audio for Cat's broadcast. Testing 1, 2. Actually not seeing anything on our recorder. Test 1, 2, check. Cool. Check 1, 2.
Well, now that they're losing rural transit too.
Yeah.
From there.
Yeah.
Well, rural transit can't serve area 10 as of January 1st.
Where area 10 offices are Okay. Good morning. It's Wednesday, June the 28th, and I would like to call to order the meeting of the Monroe County Commissioners. I will note for the record that all three commissioners are present here in the Nat U Hill Room. I'd like to start with our public comment, our public statement. Thank you.
We, the Monroe County Board of Commissioners, renew our commitment to welcome and protect the rights of all people, regardless of age, race, color, creed, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, marital status, economic status, and national origin. And we affirm the right of every person to live peacefully and without fear, and we will fight and resist at every step discrimination and harmful policies, whatever their source. We also stand in support of our county public school systems, both RBB and MCCSC.
Thank you. And I believe, yes,
I'd like to make a motion to add something to our very long agenda. Adding item W, a contract with Dr. Britton, and also simultaneously swapping out item J, moving the discussion of the Karst Athletic Complex to our work session, but putting from the work session agenda the Limestone Nomad Service Agreement for Senior Day at the fair, and that's $200, County General and Parks non-reverting. So that's my motion.
Second.
thank you. Is there any discussion at all? If not, call for a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. So let's move on then to department updates. We have Lori Kelly with us. Good morning.
Good morning. Just a few updates for you. The COVID-19 variant XBB 1.5 continues to be the most prominent circulating variant. It is accounting for roughly 96% of current infections. We are seeing a new variant of XBB known as EU 1.1 that is growing in the Northwest region. Right now, it is accounting for around 8.7% of cases. The CDC currently lists 22 variants at this time that they are being monitoring. The FDA has instructed vaccine makers to update the COVID-19 vaccine formulas to focus on the XBB variant. And the CDC just issued a Health Alert Network health advisory yesterday. This was to share information and notify clinicians about the identification of locally acquired malaria cases in Florida and Texas within the last 2 months. Locally acquired mosquito-borne malaria has not occurred in the United States since 2003. Malaria is a serious and potentially fatal disease that is transmitted through the bite of an infected female mosquito. Almost all cases of malaria in the US are imported and occur in people who have recently traveled internationally.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
No, I don't. Thank you.
No questions.
I don't have any questions either. We will see you later. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Is there any other department with an update for us? Seeing none, let's move on to approval of minutes.
I move approval of the minutes for June 21st, 2023.
Second.
Any corrections or discussion? No. Oh, sorry, I did skip one thing, but we'll go right back to public comment. Thank you, Mr. Spoonmore. All those in favor of approving the minutes from June 21st, 2023, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. I apologize for my error. Okay, it's now time for public comment. These are for items not on the agenda, unless you wanted to talk about our minutes from last week. You are limited to 3 minutes, and please state your name and whether or not you're a Monroe County resident.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm Eric Spoonmore, Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. I wanted to address a couple of items today, but I was walking up to the courthouse, and you all are just doing a phenomenal job with the grounds. It's so beautiful this time of year. I really wish some of our city planters could be kept as nice and tidy as how you all keep the courthouse grounds here. So thanks, kudos to the facilities folks for all of that. But first, on behalf of the chamber and our 870 member organizations, I want to express our wishes for a rapid and speedy recovery to Monroe County Jail Sergeant Avery Brown. We're also thinking of his family and friends and coworkers as they too process the psychological trauma caused by this horrific and senseless act of violence that took place on Saturday morning in downtown Bloomington that he was victim to. We urge all officials involved in the prosecution of this incident to hold the violent offender accountable to the maximum extent of the law and send a clear and convincing statement that Monroe County will not tolerate any form of violence. And I also want our law enforcement professionals serving not only in Monroe County government, but throughout all agencies in the county to know that the chamber supports you and the work you do and the incredible sacrifices each day that you make. The work of providing public safety is good and necessary work, and we need you here. We want you here. Monroe County and all of our communities here are better because of the vital work you perform in service to the public. And then finally, I want to say thank you to the commissioners and the county council for their work to this point on the interlocal agreement with the city and the potential formation of a capital improvement board. I know that you all have been very hard at work on this, and we're just really delighted to see the parties coming together for what I think is going to be a really positive outcome for us here soon. So I know it looks like you've got something on your work session agenda a little bit later. We saw the vote last night from the county council. We're just really, really excited to get this project moving forward. And just again, want to thank you all for your collaborative efforts in making this possible. Again, Chamber's here to help in any way that we can. If there's anything we can do to support, facilitate progress, let me know. Happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the kind words. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a public comment? Either, yep.
Speaking of law enforcement, I've been told that today is Russell Brummett's birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday to Russell. Yes. Ooh. Okay. Then seeing no one else who wishes to make public comment, let's move on to the next item on our agenda.
I move approval of the claims docket accounts payable June 28th, 2023 and payroll June 30th, 2023.
Second.
And we have Carly here again. Thank you for being here after a late night last night.
The accounts payable claims docket for June 28th, 2023 totals $7,098,446.23. The payroll docket for June 30th, 2023 includes $1,339,852.64 in direct costs and $603,940.75 in indirect costs for a total of $1,943,793.39.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
No, I don't.
None. Thank you. I just want to note that part of the reason the claims were so high is that it was transferring taxes to other entities. It wasn't that we spent lots of money at the county. Okay, a call for a vote on approval of the claims docket, accounts payable June 20. Oh, public comment on this? Thank you. Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on approval of the claims docket, accounts payable June 28th, 2023 and payroll June 30th, 2023. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. I will note for the record that we have reports from the clerk for May of 2023, from the treasurer for May of 2023, and from Scott Souter at Weights and Measures for May 16th through June 15th. And even though Mr. Souter was sick for a few days, he continued to get a lot done, it looks like, during that time period. So thank you, Mr. Souter. So moving on to new business. First item.
I move approval of a Harold Fish Inc. service agreement, fund name County General, Fund number 1,000, the amount of $4,161.30.
Second.
And we have Mr. Kreider. Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Richard Kreider, Facilities and Fleet. This particular contract, after a conversation with Commissioner Thomas, I think we decided that it should read not to exceed $5,000. So I'd like to make that change.
I'm going to go ahead and amend the motion to an amount not to exceed $5,000.
Second.
Okay, is there any public comment on that? I'll call for a vote on the amendment. Or should we just wait? Do the
We'll call for a vote on the amendment.
Okay, I'll call for a vote on the amended not to exceed $5,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The amendment passes 3-0. Please continue, Mr. Kreider.
Okay, this request is to approve the agreement with Harold Fish Incorporated, HFI, to empty the grease interceptor at the Youth Services Bureau on a quarterly basis in an amount not to exceed $5,000 over a 3-year term. HFI will report the cleanings to the City of Bloomington Utilities Fog Management Program.
Questions or comments?
No, I don't.
No, it's important to do this. The not to exceed amount came about because there are some additional items that may be needed that are listed in the contract, and just to be safe.
Very good. Appreciate that. Yes, I was out at YSB last Friday for their program on intervening with youth with truancy, and it's an incredible facility. And so it'd be great to keep it going. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, call for a vote on the Harold Fish Service Agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of a service agreement with Vet Environmental Engineering LLC, fund name County General, Fund number 1,000, the amount of $894.43.
Second.
And Mr. Kreider again.
This request is to approve the agreement with Vet Environmental Engineering LLC to provide indoor air sampling services at the Monroe County Johnson Hardware Building in an amount not to exceed $894.43.
Comments or questions?
No, I don't.
None. I don't have any. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on Vet Environmental Engineering LLC service agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item, please.
I move approval of resolution 2023-20 surplus property.
Second.
Mr. Kreider.
This request is to approve the declaration of items for surplus from Highway Recorder and Treasurer's Departments. Included are 11 file cabinets, 4 desks, 1 bookshelf, 1 office chair, 1 chest freezer, and 1 broken safe. The file cabinets, desks, bookshelf, and safe will be sold to scrap metal in a group at auction, govdeals.com. The chest freezer is operable and will be sold at auction at govdeals.com. The office chair is damaged and will be demolished and junked.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
No, I don't.
No questions.
I just hope there was nothing valuable that was stolen out of a broken safe from what I read through that.
It's the handle broke, and I think the Treasurer's Department figured out that once you spent the money to fix it, it was just better to buy a new safe. Yeah. It's empty.
It's
Better safe than sorry.
Oh, stop.
Oh,
Okay, is there, now that we've had our fun for the day, is there any public comment on that item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the resolution 2023-20 surplus property. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you,
you.
Mr. Kreider.
I move approval of the Indiana Department of Health Public Health Preparedness Grant Amendment, fund name Public Health Emergency Preparedness, fund number 8104, in a grant amount of $25,000.
Second.
And we have Ms. Kelly with us.
Yes, so this is just an annual renewal for funding for our emergency preparedness program. So this funding allows us to have a part-time assistant and also allows us to purchase supplies and services for the program.
Questions or comments?
No, I don't.
No questions. I don't either. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, a call for a vote on the Indiana Department of Health, Public Health Preparedness Grant Amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of the Health Department School Liaison Grant Amendment number 1. Fund name is School Grant COAG, fund number 8111 in the amount of $440,000.
Second.
And again, we have Ms. Kelly.
So again, this is just another renewal. So this is extending the current contract number an additional year. So this funding is going to support the salary expenses of our school liaison to work with all of the area schools for support.
Questions or comments?
No, I don't.
No questions. And if you would take a minute just to explain to the public what kind of work the liaison does.
Yes, so the school liaison is responsible for having quarterly meetings, for meeting with each of the schools and ensuring that their communicable disease plans are updated and accurate, for assisting with education and outreach. This could be education from as simply as hand hygiene to CPR courses. And so the position really is supposed to be actively involved with all of the schools and helping to promote the work of the health department and ensuring that the schools have access to vaccines as well.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the Health Department School Liaison Grant Amendment number 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you.
Next item.
I move approval of the Soft Choice Adobe licensing renewal. Fund name Cumulative Capital Development Fund, fund number 1138 in the amount of $43,396.50.
Second.
And we have Mr. Crone here with us. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Greg Cron, Technical Services Department. Nothing real exciting here this morning. This is our Adobe Pro software annual license renewal. This is a cloud-based Adobe product, which allows users to access their PDF documents anywhere they are that they have an internet connection. This product is different than what most of the public might recognize as Adobe Reader, the free version. This is actually a pro license that allows us to create documents, edit documents, and a very important step is the optimization of PDFs, check for ADA compliance before they're uploaded to our website. So this is for 350 user licenses for a period of 1 year.
Excellent. Comments or questions, Commissioner Jones?
No, I don't.
I just want to say I appreciate the ADA component of this license. I think that's really important for our website and for our users. So thank you.
And I want to point out, I'm glad Soft Choice finally figured out who our director for TSD is.
Yeah, it took them a minute. Going on what, 12 months now? But I think we've got it. So we shouldn't see Eric Evans' name on it.
Appreciate that. Is there any public comment on that, this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the Soft Choice Adobe licensing renewal. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crone. Next item.
I move approval of Graver Post Buildings, Inc. service agreement, fund names County General and non-reverting, fund numbers 1,011.78 and 11.79, not to exceed $2,700.
Second.
And we have Ms. Whitmer here. Good morning, Kelly.
Excellent. The Flatwoods Park group shelter has gaping holes in it due to age, material, and probably high winds. We would like it fixed as soon as possible. And it will be better material than what is there now.
Any comments or questions?
Yeah, what is the better material and what's there
Well,
now?
Right now, it's translucent plastic at the top.
Oh.
We're putting metal roof. So when
Sounds
that-
better.
yes, so when the hail hits it, it should just bounce off
Yes,
instead of through.
maybe dense.
Comments or questions?
No question.
Yeah, the roof now will outlast the rest of the the
Yes.
shelter.
And they're just going to fix the top part of it.
Yeah. Excellent. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I call for a vote on the Graber Post Buildings Inc. service agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of the Heflin Industries, Inc. service agreement, fund names County General and non-reverting, fund numbers 1,000, 1178 and 1179 in an amount not to exceed $4,000.
Second,
Again, Ms. Whitmer.
Excellent. Heflin Industries, they do our backflow testing and they report the test results to the city of Bloomington and they do repairs if on site if they see one. So it's not a choice that we have.
Mhm.
And we've been very pleased with their work.
Comments or questions?
No questions.
I'd like to point out that maintaining the parks is not just about mowing the grass.
Correct.
There's a lot more to it, especially with the extensive kinds of things that are offered in the Monroe County Parks, dog park, Cars Farm, soccer fields, everything. There's just a lot that goes into what we do.
And plus the backflow testing is for water safety.
Yes, thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of a service agreement with JNS Locksmith, Inc., fund names County General and non-reverting, fund numbers 1,000, 1178 and 1179 in an amount not to exceed $500.
Second,
Again, Ms. Whitmer.
This is for small engine repairs and locksmithing.
Questions or comments?
no, I don't.
Again, we have a lot of small engines.
It's mainly our chainsaws and items like that.
Yes. Is there any public comment on that, on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. And now the new item J.
I move approval of a contract with Limestone Nomad. It's a service agreement for County General and non-reverting fund numbers 1,000, 1179 in the amount of $200.
Second,
Ms. Whitmer, again.
Yes, this is for a musical performance at Senior Day at the fair. I believe he plays guitar. John's made all the arrangements and
Oh, I thought John was going to play with him.
You-
Sorry.
John actually plays the drums, so I'm surprised he's not up there with them.
Any comments or questions?
no, I'm sure this will be a fun time.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it. Sounds like it's adding extra to what goes on. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, call for a vote on the contract with Limestone Nomad Services. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. And we'll hear from you later during the work session. Yes. Oh, wait, we got another one. Okay, I'm not done with you. Two more. Oh my gosh. Next item.
All right. I move approval of a service agreement with Coding Equipment, Inc. Fund names County General and non-reverting fund numbers 1,000, 1178 and 1179 in the amount not to exceed $3,000.
Second,
Again, Ms. Whitmer.
This is for repairs of our John Deere tractors and knock on wood, we haven't had one for years, but just in case, we'll need to have that tractor up and going as fast as possible.
Good. Comments or questions?
no, I don't.
No questions. I keep my comments to myself here. All those tractor experiences. Any public comment on this? Seeing none, call for a vote on the Koenig Equipment Inc. service agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of a service agreement with Todd Septic Tank, fund names County General and non-reverting, fund numbers 1,000, 1178 and 1179 in an amount not to exceed $300.
Second.
And next, again, Ms.
Yes.
Whitmer.
Yes, Todd Septic, they pump our 2 septic fields that we have currently in any of our, I call them the grinder tanks. It's a needed item.
Yes. Comments or questions?
No, I don't.
No questions. I don't have any either. Any public comment on this? Seeing none, call for a vote on the Todd Septic Tank Service Agreement. All those in favor should signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. See you in a bit. Yeah, next item.
I move approval of a memorandum of understanding with Centerstone, fund name JDAI Programming Grant, fund number 9145, and a grant amount of $6,300.
Second.
And we have Ms. McAfee with us virtually. Good morning.
Hello, good morning, commissioners. I don't think I'm gonna beat the Parks and Rec with the number of MOUs, but you get me for 4 of these. So we're gonna start off with Centerstone. As you all probably remember, JDAI is on a fiscal, state fiscal year. So our new grants all start July 1. And so we're getting some MOUs in place for programming to continue being able to provide services without any disruption. So the first one you have in front of you is with Centerstone, and we are so excited to be partnering with them. They have a brief intervention that we've been able to refer young people for. And it's a 3 to 6 session intervention for those young people experiencing substance use. So it's not a substance disorder treatment. It is a substance use intervention, and we are able to use our JDAI funds to pay for this intervention so that young people and families are able to access this with reduced barriers.
Excellent. Comments or questions?
I'm always pleased to support anything that has to do with JDAI.
And you answered my question already, so thank you.
Yes, and I'm pleased that you're able to offer this. So, you know, when Christine and I talked last week, when kids mess up, they don't always get a second chance. And I think that the JDAI program offers that second chance in many, many situations and keeps kids from needing that second chance. So I appreciate all the hard work you do. Is there any comment from the public on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the Centerstone Memorandum of Understanding. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of a services agreement with MPAC Solutions, fund name JDAI Performance Grant, fund number 9163, and a grant amount of $7,000.
Second.
Again, Ms. McAfee.
Hello, hello. Yes, Impact Solutions. We've worked with them for the last few years. As you all know, JDAI has 8 core tenants, and one of them is data-driven decisions. And what Impact is able to do is help us put our data into visualizations that for those of us, myself included, who are not number spreadsheet people, we can really look at this data and see trends. We can see concerns. We can see data quality issues. So it's been a super powerful relationship, and this funding will help support us into the coming year.
Questions or comments?
No, I don't.
I actually have a question about all 4 of these that just came to mind, which is this the same amount as we received last year?
Oh, that is an excellent question. And I feel like we might have gotten a little bit more than last year.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize. I was prepared for my MOUs and didn't do homework on that stuff.
Great. I didn't do mine either. I should have looked it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just point out for the public too, that JDAI is the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative. We tend to sometimes speak in governmentese. So to avoid that. I don't have any questions, and I got to see an example of some of this work last Friday again. So it's well used. Is there any comments or questions from the public? Seeing none, call for a vote on Impact Solutions Professional Services Agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of a memorandum of understanding with Laura for consulting, fund name JDAI programming grant, fund number 9145, and the grant amount of $3,390.
Second.
Again, Ms. McAfee.
Yes, Laura has been working with us for the last couple of years in helping us develop a youth and ultimately family work group to help guide the work that we do. As we've often talked that making sure we include impacted populations is important to us. It's not a skill set that we come by naturally in the justice system. And so Laura's walking with us and helping us make this possibility a reality.
Comments or questions?
I'm just pleased it's happening.
No questions.
No questions from me either. I'm glad that you found somebody that seems to be effective in what she's doing. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the MOU with Laura Farr Consulting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
Let's see, this is a motion to approve memorandum of understanding with the warehouse, fund name JDAI programming grant, fund number 9145, and the grant amount of $7,250.
Second.
And again, Ms. McAfee.
Another example of our community stepping up when we identified a need. The warehouse is a great space down on South Rogers. They are a no-cost community center. We realized that some of the younger kids that were showing up needed adults to supervise them while they were there. And for a variety of reasons, an adult wasn't available. And so Dave down at the warehouse has worked with a group of young adults and is hiring them to be those mentors and those supervision folks for the kids that come in. So we are able to allow the young people to come in, access the space, have pro-social mentoring. They're developing relationships with people they didn't even know they needed to develop relationships with, and vice versa. So it is completely a win-win. So again, another shout out to a great community partner.
Excellent. Comments or questions?
No, I don't.
Well, I just want to say it's a great program. So thank you for organizing it, and thanks to the warehouse.
I agree. Very pleased that this is going on in our community. Any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on this. All those in favor of the MOU with the warehouse signify by saying aye. Aye. All the motion passes 3-0. And Ms. McAfee, before you leave, are you having any success with the mentoring program that you're trying to start with by calling on young adults in the community?
We have gotten a fairly slow start, but we have not given up hope. We've extended the opportunity for applications. So again, if anyone watching this or knows someone who knows someone, I'm also going to meet with the executive director of New Leaf, New Life, I think just after the 4th of July holiday. So JDAI is all about community partnerships and relationships. So we're hoping that might give us kind of that credible messenger to maybe talk to folks that I haven't been able to access.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. As always, take care.
Thanks. Next item.
I move approval of resolution 2023-16, the Monroe County Code update.
Second.
And do we have Mr.
I
Mr.
am more
Cockrell.
than happy to handle this. As you well know, that throughout the course of the last 6 months or so, we have made changes to our Monroe County Code. We like to update this is an update of that code. So when this is approved, we can distribute it to places like the library and our website so that we can keep it as up to date as possible.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
No, I don't.
No, I didn't actually quite get through reading all of it, honestly, because our packet was so long this week, so. I'm assuming it's all there because it's, yeah, so thank you.
Yeah. Well, it has been a week, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on resolution 2023-16 Monroe County Code update. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of resolution 2023-17 approving the issuance of major bridge bonds.
Second.
Again, we have Mr. Cockrell.
Yes, this project that we're looking at is for the completion of the Fullerton Pike, which involves a fairly long, over 500-foot bridge. And so in order to look, we have estimates in order to meet the ability to pay once the bids come in, we need to get some financing. This is a step in the process of issuing that bond. It's gone to the county council for its first reading in June. It will go to the county council for the bond approval in July. It also needs to go to the redevelopment commission because we are pledging not only major bridge funds, but the funds from our Fullerton Pike TIF. The hope is that this bond will more than cover the expenses necessary with including our previously designated cash. And if that is the case, any remaining portion of this bond will go to the next major bridge project, which is the Mount Tabor Bridge. And so if we get better bids than we expect, then we'll have some funding in this for that next project.
Comments or questions?
No, I don't.
So just to be clear, we won't be using Fullerton Pike TIF revenue to pay for the Mount Tabor Bridge.
That is correct.
Right.
No,
Okay,
that-
I
that
just
will-
wanted to-
we cannot do that.
We cannot do that. All right, thank you.
I don't have any questions. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, call for vote on resolution 2023-17 approving the issuance of major bridge bonds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of a letter of representation with Barnes and Thornburg regarding the major bridge bond.
Second.
And again, Mr. Cockrell.
Yes, and I'm going to talk about this and the next one kind of simultaneously because they're both kind of the same principle. Barnes and Thornburg will be our bond counsel, our attorneys who handle the documentation and paperwork. And then the next item is for Financial Solutions Group, who will do the financial advising. Your last question will go directly to them.
Yeah.
Once we get the bid results in. If we have any anticipated extra funding, how do we make sure we say a praise of that? They also make sure all our bond documents are in order, and they will market the bond to the public so that we can get the best prices.
Great. So this is really just to provide job security for Ms. Ridge, right? Sorry, any comments or questions?
No, I don't.
So Ms. Ridge, when is this bridge going to be, what are we looking at time wise? Because this is a long way out.
We're still talking on Fullerton Pike.
Yes, Fullerton Pike, yes,
Threw me off there.
yes.
Fullerton Pike project phase 3 is to go to letting November 15th. of
Wow,
this year.
oh, that's sooner than I thought.
Yeah.
Wow,
So then it looks at a 18 to 24 month construction.
great. Wow, huge project.
Light at the end of the tunnel.
Mhm.
I hope. Oh, yeah.
Is that a train?
Okay, so it's not a dream, is that what you?
No, a train. They
Oh.
always say that, a light at the end of the tunnel, but I hope it's not a train.
Okay, okay. Is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, call for vote on the letter of representation with Barnes and Thornburg regarding our major bridge bond. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes 3-0.
I think it was simultaneous. I think you heard it in stereo.
Okay,
That's okay.
Sorry.
No.
Next item.
I move approval of a service agreement with Financial Solutions Group regarding the major bridge TIF bond. fund name, fund number to be determined, an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Second.
And I think the only thing I will add here, because I failed to add it before, is that the fee is paid for out of the bond proceeds as well. So this is when the issuance of the bonds occurs, it will pay for the fees.
Thank you for explaining that. Questions or comments?
No, I don't.
None. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, call for a vote on the Financial Solutions Group Service Agreement regarding the Major Bridge TIF Fund bond. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now that my hearing is corrected in the
Yes, that was
3-0. Okay, next item.
I move approval of resolution 2013-19, approving the designation of Monroe County as a vote center county.
Second.
And again, Mr. Cockrell.
Yes, this resolution is step one in the look at whether a vote center is appropriate for Monroe County. It requires the state secretary of state has a nice webpage that I included a link in our packet that kind of outlines the steps. And this step is the gathering the public support and making sure that they're not going to utilize. This step two is having a steering committee formed and then doing a plan to look at where it would be appropriate and go through a lot of the details of actually creating where vote centers would be and how it would operate. So step one is to make sure they have the support of the commissioners and the county council to do that, because it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort. So this is step one. It goes, then it would go for a plan, and the plan would come back to both the council and commissioners. So this is not a final determination. We're going to do a vote centers, but it goes to the election board, and the election board has a lot of work to do. And then it would eventually come back to both you and the county council.
Could you just elaborate for the public what a vote center is?
Well, a vote center is, and it's, yes, I can. Sorry, we've talked about it internally for a long time. A vote center is a way to have multiple polling places where anybody in the county could go to any of these polling places and cast their vote. So you wouldn't be tied to a certain precinct or a certain voting area for your precinct. You could go to essentially any open voting site on election day, and you could cast your vote there. I think there are ways to do this where you are lessening the number of voting sites, and there's ways to do it where you're not. And so it really, that's those kind of devils, the details are in the devils of the plan. And so this is just saying, hey, we want to do this. I will say that the past few election cycles, we have seen a lot of provisional ballots, which is what you get when you go to the wrong polling place. And so this kind of alleviates some of that, burden of that process. And it allows people to have a lot more confidence that even if they're in a place that they're not sure there is the right place, that their vote will still count.
Comments or questions?
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. I think it will help a lot of people to be able to vote who've found it difficult for one reason or another in the past.
I just have, so first a quick question. The committee that comes up with the plan is appointed by the election board. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I really hope that this happens, and the sooner the better, because again, those provisional ballots are problematic. It is potentially a way to save money, because you might not need as many polling places, but it's the convenience of the voter that is what matters. And that is that you could vote, during your workday. You could vote, where your family is at, for an event. You could, voting takes place where it's convenient anywhere in Monroe County. And that is a huge benefit to county residents, and it will hopefully result in much higher turnout rates, because having to be in a particular location between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., which is already ludicrous, is thank you, state of Indiana, is sometimes difficult for folks. They're juggling work and childcare and all of the exigencies of everyday life. And to have to worry about getting to a particular building it could just be that barrier that's too hard to cross. So this will be great. I was unhappy that the council didn't go ahead and vote last night on this, because I hope it doesn't delay the process. I'm hopeful that when they'll hear it in July at the regular meeting, and hopefully that will be in time to have an impact, because otherwise that's delayed us a month, which is unfortunate. But I understand the concerns. You don't want to, have one polling place and everybody has to drive to it and making it impossible to get there. Obviously, you want to make sure that folks are able to access voting. That's the whole point of this. But since we don't have a plan yet, I think it's too soon to worry. It is a worry, and it's a concern that we all have, I'm sure. And, to make sure that this plan is done right and that it reflects the most convenient setup for the voting public. But just imagine not having to send out cards every year to say, you have to go to this building, but to say you can go to any of these locations, which is wonderful. So anyway, I support this and the benefits it can bring to the community.
I also support this very strongly. I've been wanting to see this in place in Monroe County for many years. I'll point out that currently, I think it's 62 out of the 92 counties in Indiana operate with vote centers. And one of the benefits also is that sometimes we have trouble recruiting staff for the polling places. You have to have clerks and inspectors and, forget the other judges. Thank you. Sheriff, well, sometimes sheriffs. Yeah. And that's been difficult. And if you can reduce the number of polling locations with vote centers, that makes it easier to get that done. But also, having watched what happens when provisional ballots are cured, it's not always an easy process. And so I think that's one of the ways that voters get disenfranchised also, because they didn't show up at the right place. And I know we've all worked at the polls many times and seen people come in and they're like, oh, I have to be across town. Wait a minute. And it's 5:55. They're not going to make it. So I think that this is a way to at least accommodate those kinds of folks because they're already there at the vote center. So I'm very much in favor of this. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, a call for a vote on resolution 2013-19, approving the designation of Monroe County as a vote center county. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. I would also point out on that this will have to come back to us a second time for approval. And also part of what will happen with this is that there will be public meetings, I hope.
Public hearing.
So there will be time for the public to have input on this as well. It's not just a small group of people that get to make this decision. Okay, moving on to item V.
I move approval of the Indiana Gas Utility Relocation Agreement, fund name Fullerton Pike Phase 3, fund number 8169, and a total amount of $46,164.46, of which $9,232.89 is actually our match.
Second.
And we have Ms. Rich here.
It's pretty self-explanatory. It's just to move the gas lines with Indiana Gas / CenterPoint. So we can go straight into construction when it's awarded this fall.
Comments or questions?
Just happy to see this moving along.
No questions. Yeah, it's not just grading and putting down pavement that happens when we do these kinds of road upgrades. So yeah, appreciate that. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on Indiana Gas Utility Relocation Agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
Item W is the new item. It is moving an approval of a contract with Dr. Britton.
Second.
And this is to appoint Dr. Britton as our local health officer. And I believe Mr. Cockrell is going to talk with us about that.
Yes, and actually, Dr. Britton has been appointed our local health officer. He's been serving in that capacity for I think a few months now. But when we went through the process, it was determined that a contract for him would be better than having him as under the county employee umbrella. And so this contract is a 4-year contract for $40,000 per year. And so, but it's cancelable at any time by both him or the health department. And so it kind of has our standard language of agreements, but it's for him to perform the functions outlined in state code as the health officer.
Comments or questions?
No, I don't.
Commissioner Thomas?
I actually do. And it's something I just noticed. So we don't do a non-discrimination clause, or I might be missing a page for this kind of an agreement. Or can we get that added in? Did I miss it? I might have missed it. I just got this morning.
I guess if necessary, we could add that as an addendum.
Okay,
I did not prepare this,
okay.
so.
And I do want to say, extend our gratitude to Dr. Britton for this service. This is a lot of work potentially for not very much remuneration, and it is a public service and we do appreciate it. So thank you.
I also extend my thanks to Dr. Britton, and we've seen how important the health officer can be through the pandemic, and knowing that there's still different COVID variants out there, we could be hit again at any time. So I appreciate him being with us. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I call for a vote on the contract with Dr. Britton. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Whoa.
And it's not even 11 o'clock.
Whoa. Well, okay. Well, we do have some announcements. Once again, I'd like to remind folks that Indiana Solar for All has grant opportunities for income qualified households. You can find more information on this at insf.org/participate. In response to requests from Hoosier Hills Food Distribution, we have started a diaper drive, which we're hosting. There's a barrel down in the rotunda of the courthouse that where we're collecting wipes, pull-ups, and diapers. And so these supplies will be handed out at the next two Hoosier Hills Food Distribution Days on July 14th and August the 11th. This came about because at the most recent food distribution, families were asking for these items. And that's the first time in the 4 years that Hoosier Hills has been offering this to the community that we've had those kinds of requests. So we're just trying to respond to the requests from members of our community. I'll remind you that free COVID testing is still available at the Monroe County Health Department at 119 West 7th Street, and also at the Monroe County Public Health Clinic at 333 East Miller Drive. We are still accepting applications for boards and commissions. You can apply at co.monroe.in.us. We continue to have virtual office hours. You can find those on the county calendar, again, at our website. We are continuing to host blood drives in conjunction with Ivy Tech. This is done with American Red Cross. The next ones are Thursday, July the 13th from 1 to 6, Friday, July 14th from 10 to 3, Wednesday, August 23rd from 1 to 7, and Thursday, August 24th from 1 to 7. Again, those are at Ivy Tech. You can register at redcross.org. You are eligible to donate every 8 weeks. Again, this last weekend, we had some severe weather. I understand that there was tennis ball size hail that hit in certain areas, and damage is being assessed in the southwest corner of the county to see what has happened. So I urge residents to sign up for the Monroe County Alert Notification System. You can do that at co.monroe.inus. We have extended in cooperation with the Monroe County Council, the assistance fund for county residents who need assistance in paying for rent and utilities. If you are in that situation, please contact your township trustee. Every resident in Monroe County has a trustee. I'll remind you that all government offices are closed next Tuesday for the July 4th celebration. And like Eric Spoonmore, I wish to extend my wishes to Avery Brown for a speedy recovery from the injuries he suffered in the line of duty. Any comments, any additions from my colleagues?
I do have one.
Please.
I should have mentioned this last week, at our, Plan Commission meeting, a week ago. If you remember, we had a discussion about, West Hunter Valley Road. And, the Plan Commission has, supported our request. And so, in the near future, that's up to Ms. Ridge, I think, in the near future, from the roundabout at Curry and Smith, going westward will be called West Hunter Valley Road. There is one vacant lot and one resident who will be impacted by this address change. But I did extend my apologies to the highway department for supporting it. They made a good case for not doing so, but the Historic Preservation Board made a case, and just given the direction of the roadway, we agreed to do that. So I just wanted to let my colleagues know that did happen.
So the signs have been ordered.
Right.
So it probably take 2 to 3 weeks. And then we also had to put in the request to NDOT for the traffic signal for the overhead signage. So we put that request in last week also.
Great.
Wow. Okay. Well, we do have multiple items on our work session agenda. So I will adjourn this meeting, and knowing that we will be back next Wednesday on July the 5th. But what time would my colleagues like to return for our work session?
11:15.
11:15? Sure. Okay, we'll see people back here at 11:15. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and for all my tongue twisters today. Appreciate you.
You ran a great meeting through a lot of agenda items, so good on you.
Let's go.
So since we substituted the.
Okay, sorry for the slight delay here. Again, it is Wednesday, June 28th. I wish to call to order this work session of the Monroe County Board of Commissioners. And because of the switch, I'd like to ask Ms. Whitmer to come up and talk to us about the proposal for upgrading one or two fields at Cars Farm Park with synthetic turf. And I see you brought your whole entourage with you today. So,
Well, thank you for having us.
so would you speak really loudly because the acoustics in here are terrible.
I will have my coach's voice. How's that?
There you go.
All righty. My name is Kelly Whitmer. I'm the Director of Monroe County Parks and Recreation. I did invite guests here today and I will introduce them. They do want to speak on this topic and they can answer questions in their specific areas. So I'm just going to talk for a couple minutes and you stop me if you want to ask a question. If not, we can ask questions at the end. And I want to tell you that I'm here to discuss the Karst Athletic Complex and the BRCJ Athletic Field Improvement Plan. And BRCJ stands for Bledsoe, Rigger, Cooper, James Engineering. All park facilities have a finite lifespan and capital improvements are required over time to assure safety and modernization for every facility. You don't see teeter-totters in playgrounds anymore. There's a reason. The Parks Board is requesting that if the commissioners and the council, their request is to invest in improvements at the Karst Athletic Complex. A couple of funding options are the food and beverage tax, general obligation bonds, or other funding options that you may have available for capital improvements. And let me give you some background on the complex. It's approximately 33 years old and it is showing its age. With assistance of BRCJ Engineering, the Park Board has chosen a project priority list out of their plan that they have been given. The top priority is 1 to 2 synthetic turf fields with LED lights. Now, keep in mind, yes, we understand they're expensive, that 2 LED systems and 2 turf fields would be transformative for the complex. One's great, 2's better. So keep that in mind. Synthetic turf fields have a positive impact on the community by increased field playability, increased tourism opportunities. For example, a 2-day tournament, a mid-sized to bigger than mid-sized tournament may have a local economic impact of over $600,000. I'll let that sink in for a second. And I have Visit Bloomington here and they can discuss more about numbers and what they believe. It is possible to construct 2 synthetic fields with LED lights in the summer of 2024. The day after construction is done, we could start playing. Now, if a drainage or irrigation project is chosen, before synthetic fields are installed. The remaining grass fields, I want you to think about this, the remaining grass fields will sustain greater damage because those 2 fields that are out for drainage and irrigation repairs will take 14 to 18 months to get back in rotated play. This will also mean that fields that needed to be rotated out cannot be rotated out and have to remain in play, which means they will even sustain greater damage. Because once the dirt starts coming and the grass starts to disappear, it gets worse and worse each week. So if we could have synthetic fields in play immediately, that will put less stress on the entire complex. We are almost at capacity or at capacity. It depends how you want to define it. Synthetic turf fields do allow for a longer playing season. This also means increased field rental revenue that we can go longer in the season. They have less yearly maintenance costs to reduce the labor, reduced equipment, and reduced supplies. In 20 years, the yearly maintenance cost for 2 synthetic fields is approximately $60,000. Compare that to $600,000 for 2 grass fields for 20 years. This does not include the synthetic turf and infield replacement. We'll talk about that later. Synthetic fields use no water. This means no water bill. This means no irrigation system maintenance. This is tremendous amount of money. CBU has been increasing irrigation rates for the last couple of years. And it's only going to get more expensive as we go. Synthetic turf fields have less daily maintenance, which means they use less fuel. This equates to reduced carbon dioxide emissions required to maintain a field. It will reduce the carbon dioxide emissions, synthetic fields will. Synthetic turf fields are immediately playable after a rain event, unless maybe it's Hurricane Katrina. That's a different issue. It is also an asset to local families. By allowing families to stay close at home for tournaments, many families have multiple children in various age groups. Families can save travel time, travel money, and the money stays in Monroe County if we can have a tournament here instead of Indianapolis or instead of Fort Wayne. It makes for a very long weekend if grandma gets assigned to go to Karst, mom is going to Indianapolis, and dad is in the car going to Columbus. When, if we had a tournament, a particular tournament, they could be here in Monroe County enjoying their day, their family day. So keep that in mind. Every family has multiple children usually, so it is a big deal for them. As with any parks facilities, the health and safety of our participants is paramount. So there are a lot of issues to consider with synthetic field and with grass fields. Therefore, serious consideration should be given to natural organic infill. Mr. Knus is going to probably discuss infills. Natural organic infill also has cooler surface temperatures than crumb rubber infill. Temperature is a concern on athletic fields. Plastic pellets and crumb rubber infill are also a micro pollutant. And I know that's a very big concern for Monroe County residents. A synthetic turf field must pass a GMAX test for shock absorption. What is that? When one falls down, how cushiony is it? It's very similar to a playground surface. If you're falling from a particular height, what is your absorption rate? Another concern is bacterial growth. But this is mainly on indoor fields. Outdoor fields are naturally exposed to UV radiation from the sun, and grooming redistributes the infill, allowing the sun to reach the exposed areas. So outdoor synthetic fields are much better than indoor synthetic fields controlling bacterial growth. If playing on a synthetic field is a concern, Cutter staff, park staff, we can produce an athletic schedule that would rotate use or limit use by age groups. So we can make provisions in our schedule to make sure a particular child is not on the synthetic field if there is a concern. The synthetic turf and infield will need to be replaced every 10 years. We can start a savings account, non-reverting account, to bank funds to go toward the replacement of these items. We can charge a capital development fee similar to what the YMCA does to synthetic turf users. We can solicit donors, sponsors, and field naming rights. But I will not promise that we'll have 100% of the funds to replace the infield and the surface in 10 years, but it will be a respectable amount. We all anticipate discussing this issue with the Monroe County Council on July 11th. Now I would like to ask Mr. Malone to come on up. He is the director of Cutter Soccer, and I think he wants to say a few words on the issue.
Thank you for having me here today. I am Louis Malone, the Executive Director of Cutter Soccer Club. We are here to support the Parks Department in their request and the Parks Board in their request from the engineers in terms of what the priority is. Turf fields are exceptional. I could talk about it from a community standpoint, community soccer standpoint, or a travel soccer standpoint, but on all accounts, this is where our community needs to be moving. From a community standpoint, we lost last spring. This past spring was wonderful, but the previous spring, we lost well over what was standard based on major rain events. And those major rain events meant that our kids didn't get to play. As a club that focuses on positive youth development through sport, that's really difficult for us. We did have to go back to the Parks Department and talk about a way to alleviate that, that expense that was incurred, and they were wonderful with us. Being able to utilize the fields more routinely is beneficial for us, and having the turf fields being able to be used immediately after a rain would be exceptional. There'll be multiple lines. We could move things around. It just gives us that utility. On the travel side, we have not had well, there are two things. We can talk about performance and we can talk about opportunity. Opportunity to play games in Bloomington. We routinely have to move games because the fields, as I won't talk about the condition of the fields. I think Kelly already addressed that, but they are pretty, they need maintenance. We routinely have to go elsewhere if there's a rain event. We have issues in a variety of ways in terms of training on these environments where there are divots or mud puddles or whatever the case may be. Bottom line, all of this needs to be renovated. Doing the turf fields first allows for us to maintain our training environment. We did sign on a new contract for multiple years, longer than we've ever done before, while those other renovations take place. It means that we have better training environments, which makes our local players and families happier to stay local as opposed to driving. That highway's right there and it's not very far up to Indianapolis. We want to make sure that we are providing the best opportunities for them to train here locally, in part because we believe we do things a little bit differently, but also because no one needs to be in the car that much. No 12-year-old needs to drive 3 hours round trip to go play soccer. They should be able to do it here. And we'd love for your support to do that. In terms of the development of our actual players, for those who really care about the sport, turf allows kids to develop at a different rate, and because their touch has to be so good, and we can talk about that and things like that. But our kids then have to go play on turf elsewhere. This puts them at a competitive disadvantage from time to time. It's not the most important part for me, but I do want to at least acknowledge that on a player performance side, as well as from the kid on a community side, this is a win-win-win all the way around. We do support the natural infill. There are lots of concerns from our board about the rubber. We wanted to talk about that, which is why we originally did talk with Kelly. I did mention to Kelly that we would already plan on having the really little kids, if it did end up being rubber, moved off of those fields, working in the natural spaces, because, you know, natural's better, at least in my opinion. And so these are kinds of things that we want to consider. I don't want to take too much of your time. I do want to say that we support all the renovations that are being offered here. Turf allows us the opportunity to do things better across the board. And we really appreciate you allowing us to use the fields as we have been able to do so. As a nonprofit organization, so far, last year we gave out over $50,000 in scholarships. This year, I've already given out over $40,000 in scholarships as we're looking at moving into the travel season. We want our money devoted to providing kids opportunities and not buying land. And so if we can continue to have a really healthy relationship with our Parks Department and the Monroe County government, then that means our efforts can go where they need to be toward providing great experiences for the kids growing up in Monroe County. So thank you so much for your time. And I am happy to, or Kelly, did you want me to answer questions now? Okay, I'm happy to answer any questions there. We can move to the next person.
Questions?
I'll hold my questions.
We may call you back up here, although I understand that you played soccer yourself for many, many years also.
I did. I played at Hanover College. That's where I kind of ended my days. But yeah, I played on the north side of Indianapolis at Dynamo and things like that. So soccer has been a major part of my life. And as you know, youth work has been a major part of my life. I worked here at Youth Services Bureau. So being here in this role kind of combines my two passions, focusing on the right side of sport and how it helps kids develop, while also, you know, I'm passionate about it. So I just get to be around soccer all the time.
It's so good to see you.
Thank you so much. It feels so cool. I'm just like, oh, I'm going back. I was like, oh no, I remember this place. Yeah. Thank you so much.
We also have Mike McAfee and Pete Nelson from Visit Bloomington.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mike McAfee. I'm the Executive Director at Visit Bloomington. Thanks so much for your consideration of this important project. This is something that Visit Bloomington has been involved in advocating for and since I've been here for 15 years, so longer than that. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of sports and tourism here in the Monroe County area. And then Pete Nelson is our Sports Development Director. One branch of Visit Bloomington is the Hoosier Sports Corporation. It's basically a fancy marketing term for our sports sales and marketing wing. Gets our foot in the door in a lot of places. So he'll talk a little bit more about specifically some events and things that this opportunity could lead us to. But I just want to say, as far as Visit Bloomington is concerned, we promote the Monroe County region, tourism in this region for leisure, conferences, and sports. Like I talked about, the Hoosier Sports Corporation. Worldwide sports tourism generates about $560 billion in expenditures a year. Soccer and football are the #1 sport, the #1 travel sport. Locally, about 17% or about 500,000 people travel to Monroe County either to watch a sport or participate in a sport or yell at referees or whatever it is they do in many, many ways. Spending about $80 million annually in our region, helping to support about 2,000 jobs. As Kelly indicated, obviously economically, it's a huge boon for our area. We are a sports community. We know it. We feel it. We are home of the Hoosiers. Specifically on the west side of our community, the county, out on the county side there. What an amazing opportunity this is. This would be just that area, obviously side of our community. It's less expensive. It's less expensive for a group to come there and stay in the hotels and use those resources, which is what a sports group is looking for a lot of times. They spend a little bit less. They travel in larger parties. As Kelly talked about, they travel with grandma and grandpa, brother, sister, those types of people, which again is great for the quality of life aspect of that. They're able to come here and be together and experience that. So not only is it economics, but it is a big part of quality of life. But these synthetic fields there, again, will just as you've heard already talking about the weather delays and things like that. But when it comes to our ability to market and sell Carrs Farm Park, which again, I want to say right now is a remarkable facility already, and we're lucky to have it with all the amenities out there, and have done lots of great things out there, and we'll continue to do so. But adding this amenity or adding this feature of these synthetic fields will definitely allow us to compete with Deaconess down in Evansville, Grand Park in Westfield, get our foot in the door with some of these places that won't even talk to us unless we have synthetic fields for their championship games and things like that. With that, I want to turn it over to Pete, let him talk specifically about more of that. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I've been with Visit Bloomington for about 8 years and had the opportunity to discuss tournaments with various tournament directors and the various opportunities. Obviously, Cars Farm Park has been a great partner to us with USA Quidditch and the Cutter Soccer and those type of events. But there are so many other tournaments and travel teams that we could be hosting. Like Mike said, with the ability to have those turf fields. I think the biggest thing is the major rain events that we've already talked about. Tournament directors don't want to have to cancel their tournament once all the parents have paid for the hotels and the tournament fees and all those and send them packing, because that's very difficult monetarily. So those 2 turf fields would allow them to, whether it's condense their schedule or delay or go longer, things like that, to be able to get those tournaments in like we want them to. So some groups that we've talked to that we've already established a relationship with are USA Ultimate, the National Horseshoe Pitchers Association, US Quidditch. We could possibly host some US Youth Soccer Regionals. We've already established a partnership with 3v3 Live Soccer to host a local tournament, but they are interested in a regional or national event as well. And then kind of an untapped market for us is lacrosse. I was actually the club lacrosse coach at IU for 10 years. Stepped down a couple of years ago to focus on family and everything else. But I have I'm very in tune with the lacrosse community. I worked for Trilogy Lacrosse for 3 summers doing national tournaments and camps throughout the country. I would travel for 8 weeks of the summer. I had them out for a site visit a few years ago, and they love Bloomington. They love the community. Unfortunately, they couldn't risk their tournaments with the rain issues and things like that. Another group is Lacrosse America. We've had out before to look at the fields. It's actually an IU alumni that runs that group. They're in South Bend. They're in Columbus, Ohio. They would love to do an event in Bloomington, but similar thing where without having any synthetic turf, their risk of canceling due to rain events was just too much, and they wanted to stick around where they knew they could get those tournaments in. So a couple more that we would possibly be able to host that would have a local and regional impact are all the various IU club sports. Like I mentioned, I coached the men's lacrosse team for 10 years. We used Cars Farm Park all the time for practices and games. I know that their women's lacrosse team, the men's and women's club soccer teams, men's and women's rugby, as well as men's and women's ultimate frisbee would all be interested in using those synthetic turf fields for their club tournaments, because IU does have the recreational sports facility, but that was built in a way that they wanted it to be used for intramural sports first. So club sports are kind of an afterthought or a secondary option for them. So those teams are always looking for field space as well. So that's kind of where we were going. Then some events that we've lost other areas that would be good for synthetic, USA Rugby Regional, Spike Ball, Collegiate Regionals, USA Archery, as well as another lacrosse tournament called Lax Bash Tournaments that went to Michigan instead. So there's a breadth of opportunities for us if we were able to upgrade and get to a newer facility. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Question.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Yes.
And this is a little sarcastic, and I'm going to apologize in advance. But since the fields that we're looking at are so close to the airport, do you think Quidditch is a good fit?
I think that's a great selling point that we could talk to them about.
Are you telling us something about yourself and your Quidditch aspirations here, or what? I mean,
I've seen a movie where they go pretty high.
Well, I do want to remind that it's an athletic complex. It's not just for soccer. Jeff can come out with his broom anytime and play on the Quidditch team. And I'm sure we can work something out with the airport. But anyway, we do have Andy Knutz. He's the engineer, and he is very knowledgeable in infield now, I think, and he can explain to you what it is. Right? Come on up. And I also, for terminology, the soccer community, athletic community, when they say the word turf, they mean synthetic turf. Some other people might go, well, is it synthetic or grass? Well, if they say the word turf, they mean synthetic.
Is that the same for if they use the term carpet?
Well, it is a carpet, so.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Andy Knust, civil engineer with Bledsoe Riggert Cooper James. And I've had the pleasure of working with Kelly in the Parks and Rec Department for a number of years now on many of their facilities. And as you know, the Karst Farm Park is their largest park, and the Karst Athletic Complex is a major component of the Karst Farm Park. And as Kelly mentioned, there's 12 fields out there, and I prepared this report. This is kind of the supplement to the original report, but between the couple of reports I've prepared, we've identified needs, maintenance, and upkeep. We've identified irrigation and drainage projects that really need to be implemented throughout the Karst complex to maintain these fields and keep them in top condition. And the investment into doing the synthetic turf fields will really, in my mind, that's kind of the key to allowing all the other improvements to happen. Because as Kelly mentioned, if we go in now, like fields 9 through 12, none of them have irrigation or drainage. And so the playing conditions on those 4 fields are honestly not very good. And so, but to install the irrigation and drainage, as Kelly mentioned, it would force all the play off of those fields for a year probably. And then all the other fields are going to get really worn out. So really the key there is to do the synthetic fields first, because then play can happen on those fields right away. And all the other fields in the whole complex can have a chance to relax and not get pressured with so much additional play while these other 2 fields are being under construction, because the construction can happen fast and they can play on. Now, so I see the implementation of these synthetic fields as kind of the key to raising playing conditions, not just on those synthetic turf fields, but on all the other grass fields as well. Now, there are there's a lot of details to be figured out, and the infill is one of those details. The standard for synthetic turf fields since the 90s at least, and I mean the first synthetic turf fields were installed way back in the 60s at some time, but the standard infill material has been a mixture of sand and crumb rubber. And the crumb rubber is important because it absorbs impact. And so that's, one of the primary health and safety concerns is about, what happens when you hit the ground. That's how concussions happen and other injuries can happen largely from, a contact with the ground. So traditionally synthetic rubber has been, or the synthetic rubber, crumb rubber has been used to absorb that impact. And but there are some newer technologies coming out now that can do the same thing with a shock pad that goes underneath the carpet essentially, and that will basically make the shock absorption across the field more uniform throughout the entire field. Okay, so the infill, there's fibers in the think of it as a carpet, because that's really what the synthetic turf is. And the infill is like granulated rubber and sand that goes between those carpet fibers basically, and helps the fibers to stand up straight and provides some ballast, some weight to it, so that when a player or the ball is moving across that surface, there's some ground feel there, right? And that absorbs the energy from the ball, from players' feet, from players hitting the ground. So newer, well, there's some concerns about the crumb rubber, as Kelly alluded to, a lot of the crumb rubber is derived from used tires. So as a result, there's PAHs and there's plasticizers, there's all kinds of chemicals that are used in the manufacture of that rubber material. And there's been a lot of concern about exposure to that. EPA and CDC have some federal studies that are looking into it now. And they've identified that, yes, there are chemicals of concern in this chrome rubber material. But thus far, they haven't actually connected exposure to that chrome rubber material in an athletic field. They haven't actually connected that to any particular health outcomes. So there is cause for concern there, but thus far it hasn't like a proven cause and effect. However, there is cause for concern. The studies are still ongoing. So one way to mitigate any possible risk there is to use a different infill material. So there's newer infill materials that are derived from like wood particles. One product is called Brockfill, and it's really like, I wouldn't call it sawdust. It's like, but it's wood particles, right? And they're specially processed to create like a rounded particle similar to how the crumb rubber is. But of course, wood doesn't have the same shock absorbance that you'd get from rubber. So the newer method is to put like a shock pad, a foamy shock pad underneath the carpet with the wood fiber infill, or there's also one that I'm kind of even more interested in is the use of this coconut fiber material. So it's more fibrous. And right, you kind of work it in between the fibers of the synthetic turf, and it really simulates more like, the natural thatch that you'd get in a natural grass field. And so it doesn't move around as much as you'd get with like a granular kind of material. So that's something we're really interested in. It does cost a little more, primarily because the application of the shock pad is necessary to get a good Gmax rating. So Gmax is like the way that they measure the shock absorbency of the surface. So another cause for possible concern is about like other kinds of injuries that might happen on synthetic turf. We had some questions about this during the Parks Board meeting last week. There is, due to, from studies by the NCAA and NFL, they found that there can be an increased risk of like non-contact injuries. So knees and ankles, they found through, hundreds of playing events and hundreds of injuries on different kinds of surfaces. They found that there does seem to be an increased risk of non-contact injuries on synthetic turf. Now, I'll say the NCAA, they play on synthetic turf a lot, and they also play on grass fields a lot. But think of what kind of grass fields are they playing on? Same with the NFL. They're playing on the best, well-maintained grass fields that you can think of. Like here at IU, they play on Yeagley Field, which is very beautiful and well-maintained, has excellent drainage underneath and irrigation. Think of fields 9 through 12 out at Cars Farm Park, where there is no irrigation, no drainage, and really poor clay soils. So I'd say that, if we think about the current condition of those 4 fields versus some synthetic fields in place of those, like I haven't done the Gmax rating myself yet, but we might very well do this soon on those existing clay fields. Like I'm willing to bet that the conditions on those fields is going to be much more dangerous than actually a well-maintained synthetic turf that's consistent across the entire playing surface, no puddles and divots and things like that. Like right in front of the goal box, the turf gets really worn out in particular. So you've got a lot of variability across different parts of the field, and that makes conditions much more dangerous, especially for twisted ankles and things if you got holes in the ground. So acknowledging those risks, but I think in this kind of circumstance, I really believe that synthetic turf fields are are going to be a wise choice. And Kelly also mentioned the temperature effects, and that's another thing, another advantage of the synthetic. That's another advantage of the natural infill materials versus crumb rubber, because like the coconut fiber and the wood fiber materials, they retain moisture for much longer than rubber particles, and therefore like they keep the surface temperature much lower on the playing field. So still, synthetic turf is going to be hotter surface temperature than like a natural grass field, but using the natural infill material will mitigate that effect quite a bit. So I'm excited to see some synthetic turf get installed, particularly with some natural infill material. I think that would be a great thing for the Karst Athletic Complex.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for Andy?
I'm just curious, with the natural fill that you're speaking of, the coconut fibrous fill. Is anybody using that currently, like in the NFL?
Yeah.
Okay, and are they finding that, my son played football and he's always played on the chrome rubber, I believe it was, because socks would be covered in little tiny, balls. And I can see, there was the ankle and knee issue that you referenced. I have to wonder if that the crumb rubber, if you will, it seems like they didn't always have the grip that they needed. And I'm wondering if there's a better grip, because you referenced the thatch component of the fibrous. So is it shown to be a better for the athletes' ankles and knees?
Potentially, yeah. I don't know if there's enough body of research out there yet to do that comparison about the coconut fiber kind of infill versus the granulated kind of infill, but it sure seems like something to look into.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, but they are installing fields with that material in Indiana now. Like I've just been in contact with the sales rep. He said that at Carmel High School, and they just put in soccer fields there with this coconut fiber infill, and they've got another field just adjacent. The football field at Carmel High School has the synthetic turf with crumb rubber, and he sent me some surface temperature shots in particular, and like on the same day at the same time the coconut fiber infill was like 30 degrees cooler. So,
yeah, because I do know that crumb rubber is hot.
Yeah,
when they're out there.
Yeah, so that's also an important consideration. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see some more data about the non-contact injuries like you're asking about. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can answer about technical details here?
Yes. Does the ball behave in the same way when it hits synthetic turf as it does when it hits?
Oh, I might have.
Lewis is saying no.
But
and does this not cause any problems in adjustments?
Well, one thing I can say is that synthetic turf would be more consistent across the entire field, whereas with grass, you get a lot of you get more impact on certain parts of the field around the center and in front of the goal boxes. And so like just that having that variability is going to change the way the ball behaves.
Yeah.
But any other thing to add?
Yeah. Bottom line, it's similar to if you think about tennis and the different surfaces that they have in tennis. Each different surface you're going to play on, you're going to get a different reaction. On turf, the ball moves quicker. It's very predictable, but it also doesn't lose its momentum as quickly. Like when you're playing on grass, there's less resistance, and so passes go faster. Your touch is like a touch that you would make you're dribbling the ball on grass. If you do that on turf and it's a little heavy, the ball just keeps running away from you. Also, in windy conditions, the ball, it's very different as well. Bounces are higher. It's a different way of playing. The fact that we don't have turf in Bloomington, I alluded to this briefly, means that when we do go play at someplace like Grand Park, where a lot of championships are happening or whatever else, Bloomington players sometimes are at a disadvantage unless they've had a lot of experience playing on turf before, because the game goes so much faster. And so it's better for the, I didn't talk a lot about the development of the players as soccer players, but it's very good for the development of soccer players to play on on those materials because of the difference that it makes.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? Well, I know we've given you a great, oh, yes.
I do, actually. So, more comments. I find all of this very intriguing. I think it's a great idea. I love the idea of saving water and not mowing, and you know how much that helps our environment, which is wonderful. I ended up looking up how much carbon a lawn sequesters, grass sequesters. So 46 to 127 grams of carbon per square meter per year, but that's less than trees. So we'd be losing some carbon sequestration, but I think we could plant a few more trees out.
We love trees.
I know. There's so many out there now. But I just wanted to point that out. On balance, it seems environmentally, this is a really smart thing. So here's what I would like to see, and I think this is doable. If you took the current rental frequency of the two most requested fields, and you did a business plan for synthetic, you could determine how much you could charge. You know what the market will bear as well, right? But you can determine how much you will charge. You don't even have to include the fact that it'll probably get more use, and you can just leave it at rates that are, you know, of usage that are current for the lawn, for the grass, and see where that nets you out in 10 years when it has to be replaced. And I would encourage you to think bigger. I would encourage you to not just think about replacing the two fields in 10 years, but using a non-reverting fund to start building up capital to do other fields, because we shouldn't just do two. But that's just my opinion. But I think, you know, I think this is a great case. I think, you know, I agree that this is good. I am hesitant to provide full-throated support for using food and beverage money for this, but that's not what this is about today anyway. But I do appreciate all the information. So thank you all for being here and sharing your insight and your expertise too.
And I think too, when you talk about creating this capital development fund, that if you can show in this kind of business plan that the savings from the artificial turf that you would have every single year, if you could show putting that into that reserve, would make a difference also. One of the things that we've talked about at the parks meeting that I didn't hear today too, is that this would extend the season over which you can play and do different things, especially when we talk about rugby. I mean, blood makes the grass grow. I don't know what it does to synthetic turf, but yeah, toes it down, right? But I think that there's opportunities for not just more use for other kinds of sports, but for the extending that season, which improves the income from it as well.
And John and Matt have already actually crunched numbers, and we probably could have those very short. John's did a lot of research on what the rental fee would be and what we'd be taking in. So we basically have all those numbers already.
I think also you need to take into account the health of the other fields and what that means for income also as you're doing these things. I don't know if John already has, but and I want to thank Andy. This is the second time I've heard about Infel, and I finally understand it. So
We do appreciate, like I said, I'm hoping to go on July 11th to the council. I don't know exactly, since we've never done this before. What is the next step? I don't know, and I don't know the timetables. I don't always know the timetables for the general obligation bonds, et cetera. So keep that in mind.
I think,
Should we take the temperature of the group here to see what we'd like to see going forward?
well, I think we could ask Angie to think about ways that we could fund this. Like, what are some potential funding mechanisms, right? Yeah, I mean, I think if we have some options, then I think we can give you some better direction.
Okay.
And then it's a matter of whether it comes to us or council first, and we could, depending on the mechanism, right? So, so if, I think that would be great if Angie wouldn't mind doing that.
And I personally am in favor of the 2 synthetic fields with the new lighting. So I don't know.
Definitely. I support it. I just don't know that food and beverage is the way to go, so.
What are you looking at? Oh, yes.
Now to get on Angie's good side.
Hold on a minute.
Well, Andy is our designer for literally everything: restrooms, trails, basketball courts, shelters, drainage. I will put it on my list.
Oh, Angie.
So we'll go to the council. I'll keep in touch with Angie and we'll just see if we can keep this going forward.
Yeah.
And you tell us what you need from us and vice versa. I appreciate everyone coming today. And you have no more questions?
No, I think it's good to go to council, just to provide the information, and hey, they may come up with some ideas.
Okay.
And I like the idea of selling name rights to the field as well. I think that could bring in extra money, and it's a 10-year.
Depends whose name it is, but yes.
Well, I'm thinking of sports.
Okay.
Okay.
And of course, I think, Jeff, is it a Nimbus 2000 you want?
I think that's a 2 years ago model.
Oh.
I want the 4,500. That's why I can,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody who came out. Yes.
Appreciate your enthusiasm.
What? And Andy and the others are so knowledgeable. I mean, so knowledgeable. It's
I'm gonna go
incredible.
back and start playing soccer again.
So. Whew. Yeah, I'm ready to go out to Karst Farm Park again too. So next item on here is a discussion of formation of a climate resilience task force. And I think Council Member Iverson is here to talk with us.
Hello, commissioners. Thank you for hearing this today. Thank you also for signing the contract with Indiana University to make sure that we can have this climate action resilience today. As you know, on May 3rd, you approved this collaboration agreement between the Monroe County government and the trustees of Indiana University. This also allows us to have a McKinney Climate Fellow. His name is Hader Atif, and he and I have been working very closely together. As part of this contract, we need to be forming a task force. You can see in your packets that there's information on kind of what the task force should be. If you look on page 10 of your work session packet, you can find out more about the work, that task force and the different categories from the community that they're recommended to come from. That is to say, stakeholders representing different sectors of the community. And then on page 7 is a very helpful graphic of the entire process that this task force will help the climate fellow work with. Today, we have already heard back from 13 individuals that they'd like to be on this task force, but we don't know what to do with them. So today, we'd like to come to you and seek your advice and your guidance on this task force. Where should it go in the organizational chart of Monroe County?
So are you coming here today to ask the commissioners to form the task force?
Yes, we need to formally, today is a discussion to kind of think about the different issues that exist. And then at your discretion, you'll actually formally form that task force, and then they can start meeting. We've had conversations with Indiana University to determine that indeed this is a Monroe County task force. It's not an Indiana University task force. So we need to think about the different ins and outs of that task force.
So I don't know, Commissioner Jones, how much you've been involved. I thought you were supposed to also be involved with the fellow, but how large of a group are you considering this should be?
This has mostly been in the hands of Mr. Iverson so far, and I believe he mentioned up to 20 people in the group, which is considerably more than they actually recommend.
That's right. The task force is recommended to consist of 8 to 12 stakeholders. And right now we have 13 individuals that have said they're interested. So we have a little bit more than what's recommended. And so we're in a good spot in terms of people that are interested in helping Monroe County with this initiative. We just need to form it.
I am curious about how you identified these people.
Sure. So we created a spreadsheet that listed out who we thought were stakeholders in the community that would have interest in climate resilience. This was created in the Environmental Commission, and we talked about that in the Environmental Commission. And then we also shared that spreadsheet with our colleagues over in the city who are also working in a resilience cohort. And so the reason we shared it with our colleagues in the city was to make sure that the Monroe County Task Force was represented by people who come from Monroe County, live or work or do work in Monroe County. And then the city task force would be comprised of individuals who predominantly do work inside city limits.
Yes. It seems that one of the ideal situations for a task force of this kind is to not necessarily have entirely people who are clearly in favor of it, but to actually get dissenting voices. Have you been able to do that at all?
I have not polled people on their attitudes towards the climate crisis or climate resiliency, but I completely agree with you that we don't want to have an echo chamber of people that think just like you and me.
And then how about the informal leadership, which I found to be a rather interesting idea. Did you identify people that would satisfy that?
Can you say more about informal leadership?
They suggested it's a really good idea to include people on this task force who are informal leaders within the county. Not necessarily elected, although they possibly could be, but their leadership exists outside of that arena.
Sure. Yeah. So Friends of Lake Monroe have gotten back to us and they're very interested in having a representative on this board. That's not an elected position or a municipal body. So that's a good example. And then also the newly reformed Sierra Club has also indicated interest. And then they would be joining other folks that play a role here in Monroe County, such as individuals with storm and water or soil and water, and those sorts of organizations.
Yeah, I think I maybe understood that a little differently, but I don't want to.
Oh, no, I think you've looked at this far more than I have. I'd like to hear this.
I understood that it would be a person, not like a group, but a person who's well known within the community and known to have a wide array of community interests.
An activist?
Yes, probably more of an activist.
Sure, yeah, and you know, we have reached out to those sorts of people, and what I think I would also point out is that as the task force has not yet been formed, we have not issued formal invitations for people to join. We've simply put out feelers to say, you know, this is a task force that's part of the contract. Would you be interested? So we know that folks are interested, but if there's additional folks that you think that we can reach out to, I think we can definitely do that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and if this is an official task force that we create, they would need to apply through the commissioners, correct? And then what kind of time frame are you envisioning this task force would continue to exist?
Commissioner Githens, I'm going to look to the legal team to see if that is indeed correct about applying to the Board of Commissioners. I don't know.
Well, I guess a question I would have before I could answer that is, you referred to we. Is the we the Environmental Commission, or is the we you and the IU intern?
So Molly Turner King has suggested some ways that we could create this task force. And one of them was to have the task force be embedded in the Environmental Commission. Another option would be to have it be a part of the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners would have, you know, oversight of that task force. So I think it kind of depends on where this goes in the Monroe County government structure.
And I guess maybe I was curious whether, you know, all this work was being done by the Environmental Commission or whether it was a different group, because I think that would inform the answer. But I guess the legal answer is that we do not necessarily have to have an application process, although functionally and practically we always have. I think that when we form any kind of non-statutory board of commission, we look at appointments, who gets to make appointments and things like that. I think that would be something you would look at as you're forming a new commission or a new task force. So I think there's some options there. I don't think it necessarily is the commissioners appoint the entire task force. I think the commissioners would decide who gets to make the appointments to the task force. I'm also, I guess in my mind, if the Environmental Commission is the right kind of overseer, maybe delegate some of these duties and give them the authority to oversee the newly developed task force. Just a couple of things that are running through my mind as we move forward.
Sure. And to kind of get back to your questions, Commissioner Githens, in the packet, we have indicated that we're expecting it to be about 50 to 60 hours of time over a 12 to 16 month period. And as you can see on the chart on page 7 of the work packet, they're going to be working with us to do a series of deliverables, and the end deliverable is going to be that climate resilience plan for the county. And so at the end of that 12 to 16 months, we would have that climate resilience plan. Right now, what they would be doing is working with the climate fellow to work on like community attitude surveys and help plan an event coming up later in July.
An event in July when we don't even have a task force? Or is this strictly the fellow doing this?
That would be the fellow doing that. Yeah.
Okay. But go ahead.
That's all right. I'll wait. Go ahead.
I did want to provide some clarity on the 3 options that I had identified as ways possible to move forward. I had spoke with one of the representatives from the Resilience Institute at IU, and she had mentioned ways that other counties had handled formation of this task force. And some other counties do use their environmental commission, but as every county's commissions differ, their environmental commissions could actually be bigger to accommodate a committee of this size. So I think the 3 tasks that I would, and Jeff, I think, and I talked about this, the options I see is make it the environmental commission as is, expand the environmental commission. And that's assuming if the environmental commission is available to commit this amount of time and the right body or commission to oversee this work. Or 3, develop a new task force. And I think if you develop a new task force, then it's up to the county on how to form that as far as appointments and things like that.
Thank you.
Okay, so last night at the council meeting, Mr. Iverson, you said that the group has been selected and there's a meeting scheduled. So that's why I was really confused, because that can't happen until other things happen.
Sure. Yeah, let me clarify. So the task force has been sent, like I said, a reach out to say, would you be interested in this? So that's the only conversation that we've had with folks. So a body has not been established. Individuals have not been told that they're part of a body. We've simply reached out to folks through this climate fellow to say, would you be interested?
Okay.
The event is something that Commissioner Githens and I were just talking about. That
Right.
is something that the climate fellow is working with his IU counterparts to put on.
Right, but we would need a task force first. Is that the meeting you were talking about yesterday?
Sure, yes. So the feedback that we've gotten from the ERI at Indiana University, the Environmental Resilience Institute, is that the task force's purpose would be to develop that climate resilience plan. It wouldn't necessarily be to do these other steps in the interim.
Yet it does make it clear that any members of the task force should expect to be involved in any of these other happenings.
Sure, yeah.
So it would be better to have that's my question. Wouldn't it make sense to have the task force before this meeting? Because they would then be behind, right?
That's pretty much the way I understood the timeline.
And we're happy to do, what the commissioners would recommend in this matter. That's why we wanted to come for a discussion today.
Yeah. So you said we asked people. Who's we?
The climate action or the climate resilience fellow, Hader Atik.
Okay.
He and I have been working with not only the Environmental Commission, but also our folks at the ERI at Indiana University.
Right.
So ERI puts on weekly webinars. We're on, these meetings all the time. And the parts of the packet today that go through what is a task force come from a much larger document.
Right.
And because students are involved, Indiana University has this timeline they're trying to move people along on. But I also understand that's not our timeline. We can go kind of at the speed that we want. However, I would point out that the McKinney Fellow will go down to part-time starting with the school year. He will stay with us to get that climate action plan written with this task force. So that's kind of where we're at.
So, so I get all that and I understand it is very time sensitive. But that's why I'm asking if we need to get something together for next week in order to be ready for this first meeting, because it seems, So, so the other question I have is, my understanding from the May meeting when this was all presented was that the fellow, and I hate that name, the fellow is being supervised jointly by you two, Commissioner Jones and you, as members of the Environmental Commission, right? Is that true?
So Hader and I have weekly meetings to make sure that he's on task. Both Commissioner Jones and I have looked at his work plan. We both looked at the climate resilient or the climate vulnerabilities work that he's done. And we are also working with him on the survey that he's written.
Right.
So we are reviewing all of his work.
Right. But wouldn't you be at a meeting, Commissioner Jones, with the weekly meetings?
Unfortunately, as this came into being, it was the time of year when Fridays are extremely difficult for me to find any extra time. And they are actually meeting on a Friday.
And now that Mr. Atik is coming back to the United States and he'll be in person, I think it would be entirely appropriate to revisit that meeting schedule.
Yeah, I think
I would recommend that.
that would certainly help
Yeah,
me to be able to be a more active participant.
Sure.
yeah.
Okay.
I would recommend that, because it's important to have both input from both of you, rather than just one of you. I think that's important. So, okay, so
I have another question
Yeah.
related to the fellow, if I could, because I think it impacts what we're talking about too. You said that this would be something that occurs over 12 to 16 months. Is the fellow going to be around for a full 16 months?
Let's
I
see.
thought it was only a year max.
The fellow, the way that the contract is written and the way I at least understand it is the fellow is going to be full-time during the summer.
Right.
And then they'll go down to part-time during the fall semester. So Hadair has been, here for a month. You signed the contract about a month ago, so.
So then what happens after his time?
I think
Yes.
that would be work that this task force could pick up and do. Again, the end goal for all of this work is the climate resilience plan, which is a document that guides the work of resiliency here in the county for the commissioners and the council. So if the fellow is no longer available to do this work, then I think the task force would be a good place for that work to continue or be finalized. But again, this is up to you and.
Okay.
I was, sorry. My impression is that while yes, the main task of the task force is to come up with a plan, the materials actually then talk about how it needs to move to an implementation stage, and that the task force actually remains involved to kind of keep track of what is being implemented, what's working and what's not working, where revisions are needed and things of that sort.
Commissioner Jones, you're absolutely correct. The plan that Indiana University is working with does suggest an implementation team. And I think depending on how you structure this task force, that could eventually become the implementation team, or it could be made flexible enough to move members in and out based upon their skill sets.
I would like to return to the three options that Ms. Turner King brought up.
I personally, I just, there may be some overlap in the Venn diagram in my mind with Environmental Commission, but I certainly don't think that this is appropriate to hand off to the Environmental Commission, because it does require such additional commitment of time and energy, no pun intended. So I think a separate task force would make sense, and I think we need to work through as quickly as possible. Members, chair, and all that good stuff, which I think we could do.
I agree. I do not think that the current Environmental Commission could really successfully oversee this. In general, people seem to feel that they don't have a lot of extra time to give. But also, I would like to point out that there are other aspects of environmentalism than merely climate change. And I would want the Environmental Commission to continue to focus on some other aspects.
If I may, commissioners, to clarify, the McKinney Fellow, and I'm looking at the contract right now, he's here, the duration of the contract is from May to August with 200 hours of support for the county over a 16-week academic semester. There's the option to extend into the fall, which would include from August to December, but that option, as of right now, I don't know that we've said we're doing that.
That is true.
You might be around August.
I guess I would need to see who's been asked if they're interested or invited.
I'd be happy to forward that to you.
And then I think we just need to come up with a plan for officially inviting people to an official task force that we need to officially form.
And we also need to officially assign tasks to them, I guess.
Yes.
And I think probably clarify what deliverables are.
That's right.
Exactly.
And we put a lot of information in the packet today that kind of helps guide that work. So Commissioner Jones, you are spot on.
So, yeah, I would, in addition to see who's invited, I'd like to see what we would normally see for people who apply to boards and commissions, which is a little bit of their background and why they're interested in this. I always find that very helpful.
Sure. And Commissioner Githens, to that point, you will receive not only the full spreadsheet with all of those that we considered inviting, that didn't invite, and those who said no, and all that fun stuff, but as well as just that smaller list of those that said they would be interested in receiving an invitation should the commissioners get to that point.
And did you explain the time commitment to all these folks?
Yes, the longer document that you have in your packet, there's an appendices that includes a form letter essentially. So it has a lot of the same information that's on the executive summary for today.
It would have just been better to do this the other way around, I think. I don't want anybody to feel slighted if they don't actually get invited. But neither here nor there, it's already done. It looked like Jeff had something.
Well, I guess in my mind, what I'm hearing is that we're going to look at creating a task force. I'm kind of, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. Is this kind of, I mean, in my mind, there's a kind of a temporary task force that that traditionally, I think we would prepare a resolution for as a limited duration. It doesn't go into our code because then in 2 years, we'd have to remove it from the code. Is that the type of document we're looking at? Okay.
Sounds like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was, then there was the implementation, and then the implementation, who knows how long. I just kind of trying to get my head around.
Yeah, I think it could be that the implementation group could be a longer term group, a different group, but I don't want to jump to that place yet, right? Until the task force is actually met, been formed and met. Formed, appointed, and met.
Plans.
Yeah, and to see maybe, and then that maybe becomes something, a permanent or even a short-term group itself.
And it could be that also this is ways that the county itself could be making changes to add to this. And so, yeah,
right, it may be internal, it's just county, working group like trails. I think we mentioned that as well.
Yeah. We also need to decide how appointments, or I guess maybe I should say who will make appointments.
I would think that'd be part of what.
Yeah, I think
that's guiding. Yeah. So who's going to write this up?
I'll work with Molly and we'll try to figure that out. And so the other question is, I've heard 13 members. Is that where people are comfortable with, or do we just leave that blank for now? And
I think
leave that blank for the moment.
And again, there's no invitation that's been sent, folks. Yeah, so there's some folks that are interested that you can pick and choose from.
And of course, with it becoming a formal task force, there will be a quorum that will be necessary, and the more people we put on it, the harder it is to come up with the quorum.
And does this the number that you're talking about include the two of you? Or are those additional people?
No, and it also does not include Nolan Hendon, who is the current president of the Environmental Commission.
Okay. Yeah. Starts to be a little bit unwieldy at times.
If we could, and one of the things that is mentioned is that there are individuals who might cover more than
That's
one
right.
aspect
That's right.
of this.
Yeah.
I would kind of prefer to go for 8 or 9 people, assuming we could find those kinds of individuals. I do think it's important that most of these areas that are listed become involved.
I think the challenge for what's moving forward is to limit it. People are very excited about this. People are very excited about working on climate change issues. And so the problem is not going to be too many people or too few people. It's going to be too many.
Well, and you can bring people in to talk with you.
Yes.
Commissioner Githens, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it just feels like things have been decided outside of what needs to happen officially, so I think if we can get something together, meaning Jeff and Holly, sorry, if we could have something to look at for next week, I think that would be ideal.
We'll do our
and then
best.
We should talk about members and things like that as well in the near future, so.
Anything else, Mr.?
No, commissioners, I thank you for your time. You had a late night last night and a long meeting today. So thank you very much for your attention.
Not as long as your meeting.
But it kept me from reading through all this stuff in this work packet, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our meetings are still short.
Yeah, comparatively, yeah. Next item is hearing from Jeff Cockrell of the Legal Department over ordinance 2023-24, the creation of a capital improvement board.
And yes, we did this last fall but it was contingent upon some things that didn't happen. Essentially and this is the ordinance establishing the CIB. And I think we've had a lot of conversations about the interlocal dealing with the CIB and they're different in this way. This ordinance, the state statute authorizes the Board of Commissioners to create the CIB. And so that's what this does. It creates the CIB. It says who gets to make appointments and does that kind of basic work. I think the interlocal is much more of how do the city and county assets interact with the Convention and Visitors Commission so they can continue to do their great work, and the expansion and the CIB, which would kind of take over a lot of the infrastructure and management oversight with the convention center. So that is by its nature going to be a much more complex document, right? Because it's got a lot more things and it's got a lot more people who have to approve it. So what this does is it kind of gives the basic, and I think it's reflective of what was in the draft interlocal, in that there are 6 appointments, 3 are made by the city, or really 7, but 3 are made by the city, 2 by the mayor, 1 by the city council, 2 are made by the commissioners, 1 by the county council, and then those 6 would pick the 7th member. And there are some political affiliations associated with the commissioners and the mayors, so that when we get to the end, we can't have more than 4 from any political party on the board. So it reflects that. It indicates that the CIB will basically select a site for the expansion of the convention center, including the site plan, contract for the operations and the management, oversees the hotel addition process, kind of all those things that, we've been talking about with the city for years, but it would put that in there. And it also, and I think this also discusses the need for the commissioners in the city to execute the necessary agreements and transfer the property. And this says that the commissioners are going to work with the city on that. Clearly, that's what the draft interlocal is. So that's really all this says. This says we're going to create a CIB, and we wanted to do these things, which is essentially manage the convention center expansion and then ultimately manage the entire convention center program in the community. And then and it reflects on the city and the county are gonna have to get together to, because this document alone doesn't fund anything. It doesn't give any assets to anything, and that's kind of what that other part of the documents do.
Just to clarify, the last section mentions that we commit to providing necessary real estate property as requested by the CIB. I'm assuming that the city's version says the same thing.
There isn't a city version of this document. This is a county commissioner.
No, I'm sorry, of what's being prepared for the interlocal. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of where we are today.
Okay.
We're not talking about the interlocal today, but in the interlocal, that's the kind of thing that's going to be in there.
Yeah. Well, basically what the interlocal is the draft, and we're waiting to hear back of the city's administration comments to the draft that was worked through with a member of the county council, a member of the city council, and a member of the board of commissioners. Included language that the CIB would make recommendations to whoever owns whatever property. And say, hey, this is the property we need, and then that group would then turn that over, and unless it's just bizarre, right? Essentially. And so when we met and talked about the interlocal with the city council, I think everybody at the county side expects the property that currently has Napa to be included in that. And the current convention center to be in that. And then there's, do they need the part of the lot west of the B-line? Don't know. I think from the county's perspective, I think everybody anticipates the lot north across I guess it's Third Street. That the city owns will be part of the expanded center in one form or another, where the hotel goes, where we talked about that, and that's what was all included in I guess it was 2018, 2019 review and all that. So I think the expectation is that's what they need, and they may need a little bit more, but we don't really know at this point. So the interlocal, which is not what this is,
Right.
says that, hey, the CIB needs to let people know what they need, and in terms of that, and I think there's commitments to that the city will use their or food and beverage tax, and the county will continue to utilize its innkeeper's tax in a similar manner. Unless something changes, right? I mean, it's hard because I'm looking at the convention center manager and the Visit Bloomington director together, and their roles have always been somewhat intertwined. I think as we move forward with this combination, I think early on we discussed move Visit Bloomington into the new convention center, and so I hate for us to get too tied down into our current roles that we don't allow for the natural evolution of what their work does. Right. I think that's important, and I think it's going to happen. And so some of these percentage of innkeeper's tax here or there, I think it's great to have that premise and say, we're going to continue to do that. But I think 5 years down the road, if it doesn't make sense, I think the CIB should be able to say, hey, this doesn't make sense anymore. Can we change that perspective?
So just to follow up on that, I haven't seen the interlocal, and I know that's not on today's agenda, but I'm curious about it, so I'm going to ask, and I'm sure there are others who are probably curious, if you don't mind. So the goal with the interlocal is to provide some guidance, but not too much guidance, because it is really up to the CIB to really steer the ship, right? So that's the balance that's being sought in creating that interlocal.
Well, I think when the commissioners approved the CIB last fall, it was contingent upon the mayor and the city council also. Well, the city council approved a resolution and had I think it was Exhibit A to it.
Yeah.
That was based a lot on things they were hearing from the city administration about concerns, right? And so what the interlocal tried to do is, let's look at these concerns, let's put them in an interlocal so everybody knows how they would be resolved under this new. There's some things we agreed with, some things we didn't. I think there's some things we agree and we don't agree with even to this day, right? I mean, the perfect example is how the CVC appointments, the two council appointments. I don't think there's anybody at the county that has 100% comfort level to say, this is a great idea. Let's do it. But we also understand the city's perspective of, hey, we're putting a lot of money into this, you're putting a lot of money into this, and the balance in the CIB ordinance, we're feeling a little unsure about that. So you kind of understand where they're coming from. It's just the state code says something. And so we're trying to figure out ways that we do not counteract the state code, but still gives that kind of partnership feeling at the end of the day. Because I think the county has always wanted this to be a 50-50 partnership or
Right.
equal representation. 50-50 is always tough because sometimes you guys need 51, sometimes they need 51, right? It's just how it works. So I think that's kind of what the interlocal is supposed to do. It's supposed to address the concerns the city had when we put forward the CIB last fall. I think it does a pretty good job in a fairly neutral way, so that it really does try to create that kind of natural 50-50 balance. We both have to work together while still giving the ultimate authority and decision makers to an appointed board who, when it gets filled, it should be people who are really interested and really have a lot of great ideas and a lot of knowledge and background on how these things should work.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it does contemplate a lot of deference to that group on decision-making points.
Thank you for that. I guess I am moving ahead beyond this because this is a very simple document. It's really echoing what we've done before. 501c3 is not the way to go. It lacks transparency. It lacks access to budgets and information, financial information. Public meetings aren't required. I mean, you can write in all you want, but if you have to hire a lawyer to enforce it, it's not worthwhile. But so I'm glad to see that. I love the idea of, 3 appointments, and those 6 people pick the 7th. Great. I've been a skeptic in a lot of ways about economic impact when there are few local restaurants under different ownership, when there are some businesses that will do well, which is great. I'm happy to see that. I just don't know that a lot of service jobs is really the positive economic impact we want. Because really it's going to be in hotels and restaurants that are going to see the biggest impact. I have nothing against hotels and restaurants, but those are not the kind of wages and the kinds of jobs that I think we really want to attract. However, we're going to do it. The majority has spoken, fine. Let's do it right. And so I support this.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that Commissioner Thomas said.
I do want to see just some slight changes to section 2, because currently it says that the mayor shall appoint 2 members to the CIB. The appointments must be from different political parties. I'd like that to read shall not be from the same political party. And then there's nothing in that section that indicates that no more than 4 of the appointees can be from the same party. At least the way I read it.
But if you do it this way, where they have to be different political parties, one appointment.
That's only 2 out of the 5.
What if one of the,
Out of the
what if
7,
the councils decide to?
out of the 7.
So what I'm saying is that there's no way, the way it's currently written, to ensure
That 7th, it's the 7th person that's the issue,
it could be.
potentially.
Potentially, yeah. So
Because
we
the
need
way
to-
it's written, this, out of the 6, there's no way you could have more than 4 out of one party.
Right, but
But it's
there's
the
nothing in,
incorporation of the 7th.
So a statement in there that reflects that the 7th would have to meet the political party requirements of state code.
Right.
There you go.
Right. Right, but currently it's not in.
Yeah,
there.
and
That's
I
what I'm
would
saying.
just reference state code too, right? Instead of writing it all out. I mean, you want to write some of it out,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
do that in planning a lot now, which makes so much more sense because code changes.
Code
And you
changes.
don't want to have to go back
Yeah.
and hear it through your
Yeah.
code yourself. I see your point, yeah, because I was like, well, there's no way there can be more than four, but yeah, the seventh person is. Yeah, okay.
And I do feel some time pressure on getting this done as well,
Yeah.
because we do have to have things reported into the state. In fact, I heard from somebody in Indianapolis yesterday Monday, who wanted to know where things
Yeah.
stood. So they're not forgetting what's going on down here.
I don't think it should be included in the CIB document here, but I just want to say that I would hope that all of the appointing bodies will consider diversity in terms of race, income, geographic residence within the county, et cetera, as they're making these appointments. Yes, we need people who are experienced, but I think we also want to try to get as diverse a group as we can, representing a lot of different aspects of what diversity means. But I don't think that's anything we should write in here. I just wanted to say it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would it be inappropriate to invite Talisha Kopic and Mike McAfee up to make a few comments to us? Especially since they put so much time into this. Come on up, yeah. And I do appreciate you both being here.
Oh, hi. Well, my name is Talisha Kopic and with Downtown Bloomington, Inc. And we certainly appreciate all the work and diligence that you all have put into this over several years to help get this right. I was just thinking this is the 100th anniversary of that building at 302 South College Avenue.
Wow.
It's held up dramatically. It's been great for a meeting and event facility. It's still very sturdy, has good bones. And so, there's something kind of surreal of okay, yeah, it's kind of time for this next step for it and take it into the next 100 years, which is kind of hard to believe. But anyway, convention business has certainly come back strong after the pandemic. We've got several new groups that are coming and they, range from mental health groups, nutrition, school nutrition. We're having a lot of those conferences this summer. And there's a Native Plant Society coming. There's just some real interesting new groups that are coming. And so I know that's important as we look forward and just appreciate all the work that you're putting into this. And it's been wonderful working for Monroe County over all of these years. So, so thank you very much.
The plant group is an invasive plant species group.
Good.
Mike McAfee from Visit Bloomington. And again, I just want to echo what Talisha said and thank you for all the work you've been doing on this and particularly the forward movement over the last few weeks. I really appreciate that. I just want to say, I know Penny knows about this, but we are very excited. Next July of 2024, we'll be hosting the Indiana Society of Association Executives, their annual conference here for 3 days. There'll be 150 statewide meeting planners here. We'll get to showcase Monroe County and Bloomington to them. And I think it would be, I really hope by July of next year, we will have something to show that, at least something on paper to tell them about the showcase to them. So that's really what I'm going to be working towards. We're going down to that conference is in Evansville this summer, and Visit Bloomington will be going down there and hosting a dinner and a preview to 2024. But that's going to be my goal, is to have something really cool to show them next July. Thank you again.
Awesome.
I know when we first started this, I was a skeptic about whether or not business would bounce back following the pandemic, because we've all gotten so accustomed to kind of the virtual world at this point. But in going to the DBI meetings and conversations with Talisha, business is back, definitely. And the other thing that I've seen is that, and this is part of my own education that I've needed, is that these kinds of folks that come in, they're filling our restaurants and our hotels during the week, which is not when we generally have other types of tourism come through.
Right.
And so I think that's part of the real boon to our economy, is that it's maximizing some of the things that we have here. And so I have evolved from being a skeptic to being a supporter. I'll put it that way.
I'd have to say that's been my evolution also.
So
Can we get it on our agenda next week? That's my question.
yeah, I was just about to say the same. Okay.
She's like, finally.
I'm like, yeah, right.
It is such a simple document.
But it has so much weight to it. So, yeah, I look forward to getting this done. Yeah, thank you. Thank you both very much. And now we have Jennifer Pearl from the BEDC here to present issues. I'm getting hungry too. Morning.
Hey, it's great to see you here today. Thank you so much. And we have a PowerPoint. And thank you so much to Tech Services for that. I very much appreciate it. I'm also just going to watch my time here because we don't want to keep you here all day. As much as we all love talking about economic development. All right. Well, so thank you.
Would you move the mic down closer to you, Ms. Thank you.
For short people.
If this, well, no, the acoustics in here are not great. So
I even wore heels today for this podium, so I get it. All right. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to present to you, the commissioners, today about the ongoing support that the commissioners offer that's been appropriated by County Council. That is a part of the BEDC's budget. This opportunity is to present on our work, benefits to the county, and future directions. I believe each of you has a spiral bound notebook in front of you with the full detailed report that we delivered in January. And I will be speaking more broadly about it today. Before I move forward, just wanted to double check if there was any specific questions that you have, or if we'll hold those to the end.
we'll wait to see what you have to tell us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time. So moving to the next slide. If that's how this works. Okay, so the BEDC, we are a nonprofit that serves all of Monroe County. And we advance the creation, attraction, and retention of quality jobs. On the next slide, you could see the work that we do advances economic development strategy for the community, which I think is the next slide, as well as supporting employment growth and attraction.
I don't think they're hearing you.
Oh, thank you so much. Should I just keep saying next? Is that best? Great.
Okay.
All right, next. BEDC leadership. You'll see some photos on the screen that pop up here. And we would like to thank Commissioner Githens, as well as County Council member Jeff McKim, who serve on our executive committee. We meet monthly. The executive committee and our officers guide the work of the BEDC throughout the year. Next. What is economic development? At heart, it fosters conditions for prosperity. Decades ago, the way economic development was practiced was you had land and a company, you put them together, and voila, you have jobs and investment. It is not so simple anymore. Employers, just like our neighbors across the community, have increasingly focused on quality of life needs such as housing, childcare, workforce development, diversity needs, and more. Next. So the BEDC's areas of focus are on traded sector companies in addition to economic development strategy. Our business retention, expansion, and attraction projects support the growth of traded sector companies and the jobs that they offer. The traded sector are companies that sell goods and services outside of the region to bring income into the region, which is then circulated amongst our local companies. Think of Cook, Oliver, Catalent, Tassus, and others. You may be asking, why do we grow existing employers and attract new ones when we know that our unemployment rates are so low? Economies change over time, and as much as we all wish we could, we're not able to control the global economy. We know that we used to produce 60% of the furniture in North America here, then it was RCA and Otis and others, but economies change. We've had the rise of life sciences, and now we're seeing the rise of tech. So there's a need for fostering what's next while taking care of our current employers. Next. Economic development also works on a long timeline. A great example of this is the Bloomington Rehabilitation Hospital at 46 and Curry. It was 2 years from when the BEDC started work with them to when they opened their doors. And that work has continued forward. They've actually over-delivered on their hiring promises. There's currently around 140 staff. So we work on a long time horizon. Next. The BEDC funding breakdown. This is just to give you a peek into how we operate. Around 70% of our budgeted revenue for 2023 comes from memberships. There are 2 memberships, one from county commissioners, one from council. Most of our members are private sector, but all 3 of our local governments are included, as well as IU, Ivy Tech, nonprofits, K-12, and others. Around 18% of our budget comes from sponsorships and grants, and around 12% of our budget comes from government appropriations on top of membership. So including the MOU that we're discussing today from the county, as well as a similar appropriation from the city. Of the county contributions, because you have 2 memberships and the appropriation we're discussing today, that accounts for around 7% of the BEDC's budgeted revenue for 2023. Next. So you may be asking, how does that compare to our sibling organizations around the state? A recent survey showed that a bit over 60% of respondents reported receiving county funding for greater than 10% of their budget. So we're really appreciative of the county's investments in economic development for the community, and just grateful for the investments you made alongside other counties. Next. What does Monroe County government and what do residents gain from the BEDC? This falls into a few different categories. The first I want to talk about is the projects that are supported by the BEDC and how that leads to capital expenditures in the community. So capital expenditures are land, investments, and other improvements that companies make. From 2021 to 2022, there was a combined $612 million in capital expenditures from the companies that you see on the screen that we worked very closely with. So Baxter, the Bloomington Rehab Hospital, Catalent, Phoenix, Oliver, and Pravelli. That's around 2/3 of $1 billion. Monroe County government does not have an economic development department, so the BEDC provides services that might otherwise be done in-house. I want to give a big shout out to Jeff Cockrell because we work closely with him on projects. He just recently referred a project to us last week that we've been working on together. So we help them find land and buildings, guide companies through the tax abatement process, introduce them to the correct county departments like planning and engineering, and help to serve in many ways as an ombudsman as they're expanding locally. So that's all well and good, but what does that actually do for taxpayers here? So there's a few different benefits to government and taxpayers from capital expenditures. One is that CapEx stimulates the economy. By expanding output at our local companies, it enables them to ramp up and create additional direct jobs, as well as indirect jobs at the many different partners they work with across the community. Second, capital expenditures that increase actually to help keep property taxes lower. The reason why is because tax rates are calculated with the overall tax levy divided by the assessed value. So raising assessed value among our employers lowers tax rates overall. Third, increases in wages feed into local income tax revenue, and it also supports consumer spending in our local economy. According to IU's IBRC, Average wages in the sectors that we target at the BEDC resulted in an average of $18,000 in wage increases from 2017 to 2021. We also saw local wages rise during Catalent's push to hire, starting at $19 an hour. And despite their recent layoffs, our average wages have stayed up from that bump that we saw in our local market. And finally, capital expenditures enable our community to keep pace with technology and infrastructure improvements. A great example of this is Cook Pharmica's past investment in what became the Catalent site. When they took over that site in 2018, there were around 750 employees. They're now around 2,500 employees today. By having that investment in the building and in the technology that was there, we were able to grow that for the future of the economy, even though the building changed hands. Next. So beyond capital expenditures, what are other benefits to the county and residents? One is the strategic focus that the BEDC brings to economic development. We focus on the industries that you see here, include advanced manufacturing, life sciences, technology, creative arts, and energy. And the reason why we focus on these industries is because they build on our existing companies, our existing strengths in the community, and there's a track record for wages and job growth in these industries. I already mentioned wages. During 2017 to 2021, in these industries, we saw a growth of around 1,100 jobs. The BEDC screens projects that come in for best fit for our community, and we do our best to avoid any projects that may have a negative impact in some way, such as on the environment or otherwise. The BEDC worked on 22 active business retention, expansion, and attraction projects last year. So it was a very robust year for what we were seeing coming in the door. Next. We also bring a strategic approach to land use. While we have around 900 acres to develop for future employment growth in Monroe County, we currently lack around 400,000 square feet of space just for our current employers. And that's just to retain those that we currently have here. So moving forward, what we are really aiming to do is to work with our partners to update infrastructure on the sites that are available, zoning, and do any other site preparation that we can with utilities and others to make sure that we can accommodate, especially our existing companies when they have growth needs. We've also seen some wonderful opportunities at the Monroe County Airport. In 2022, we facilitated meetings between airport leadership and subject matter experts to provide information on best practices for developing airport property, which can help develop and strengthen the long-term economic sustainability for the airport. We continue to promote airport properties in our materials. And in 2023, we got even more strategic. This included submitting the airport property as a potential site for clean aviation for a business attraction project this year. This was part of a national search, and we were one of 3 finalists, which was a really big deal for our community. While another site ultimately won out, we actually consider this a win because we were able to work with Carlos and airport leadership on ways to strategically support the airport, capital investments, and employment growth. This positions us for future opportunities because we often have a quick turnaround on those, and it put the site on the radar of site selectors for future projects. Next. So moving along to, beyond business retention, expansion, and attraction, what about strategy? Because as I mentioned, it's not as simple as it used to be. Communities really thrive when they have shared vision, they lean into what makes them great, and they coordinate investments in those areas. We've seen that, a great example would be, Nashville, Tennessee. Everybody knows it's Music City. That's not always something that they coordinated in the past. That was a decision of leadership and investments that they made. Similarly, we have an opportunity to lean into what makes us strong here to position ourselves for a strong future. We know that we're a hub on the innovation corridor from Indy to Crane. We have national and state investments through the U.S. CHIPS and Science Act, infrastructure funds, Ready 2.0 from the state, and the IU 2030 strategic plan is launched, which will impact communities around the state. If we do this right, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to launch ourselves into a strong future, but it means having a vision and preparing ourselves in order to respond to those opportunities. So what is that vision? And where do we need to invest as a community? The Economic Vitality Project has been our response to these community needs. And huge thanks goes again to Commissioner Githens and to Councilmember McKim, who have been very active members on our steering committee for this project. Our goal is to ensure that Monroe County becomes the best community for employers, innovators, individuals, and families, that we have a strong future. As a community-wide strategy, the EVP is much larger than the BEDC. It's about collective action across our sectors. It frames the community investments that are needed and why, and it can help public, private, and nonprofit leaders focus resources and investments. It also identifies lead partners to implement various aspects of the plan to make sure we're all supporting one another. Okay, so what goes into that plan? On the next slide, you can see the 3 areas of need and focus that the steering committee has been considering: economic vitality, quality of place, and quality of life. Under economic vitality, we see opportunities for us to be better leveraging our innovation assets for future technology growth. We see opportunities for job and wage growth in the community. Our wages in this community actually lag the statewide average and other communities around the state. So Bloomington is around $25.73 per hour, but the statewide average is just shy of $29 an hour, whereas a city like Ann Arbor is north of $32 an hour. By attracting quality jobs and fostering really great future opportunities, that is an opportunity we have to grab. We'd like to see local poverty rates go down as well. And the better that we can become in connecting workforce to the opportunities that are there, that is another opportunity that we see before us. We need to prepare our future labor force, particularly to address challenges of our aging labor force. We know that we have over 120,000 individuals over age 16 in Monroe County. But of those 120,000 individuals, 22% are over age 60. This is higher than some of the national averages that I've seen, and we know that we need to prepare ourselves for the future. Beyond economic vitality, I think you'd be very familiar with the other buckets that we see here. Quality of place, we all know that non-student housing is needed across the community. There's opportunities for strengthening public safety and community beautification. And then under quality of life, needs for childcare staffing, healthcare, mental health care staffing, support for unhoused in our community, as well as advancing in diversity in our community as we do lag other peer cities. There are many different organizations leading quality of place and quality of life needs. So we're partnering with them through the EVP as different partners will spearhead different parts of the plan. We know that these things are not only important for our neighbors around the community, but also for our employers, because these are things that we get asked about by our existing and prospective future employers. Our next steps are to grow the coalition of leaders and organizations that are a part of this to help implement these plans together. And the BEDC will be advancing efforts under the economic vitality bucket. Next. So moving into 2023 and beyond, what's in it for the county? We've already talked about the EVP, business retention expansion, tech cluster. Moving on to the next slide, I can talk a bit more about life sciences. We know that we have around 9,000 people who work in life sciences in our community. We've launched workforce tours with Baxter, which have already borne fruit with an IU hire recently. We're supporting them on their acquisition, and we're here to support companies even during downturns. When Cook and Catalent announced their layoffs, we reached out to both of them to connect them with community resources. And we also provided lists of local employers that are hiring so that the individuals that were affected can land in our community and be retained here. We know that there's a few hundred jobs open, and we continue to update those lists. Next, other benefits to the county are promotion of the community through our video series, which is on YouTube. Next. And then also through our newsletters and social media, we are constantly putting out information on Monroe County government offerings, and others. Believe it or not, our government calendar is actually our most popular newsletter. So I guess, people really want to come and see all of these meetings. So we try to get the word out about everything that you're doing. Next. So a summary of benefits is really a strategic approach to economic development across the community, to business retention, expansion, and attraction and land use. Our capital expenditures from our projects stimulate the economy. They help keep property taxes lower for everyone, increase wages, and enable our community to keep pace with tech advancements. And overall, we're able to provide services for Monroe County government in lieu of having a department in that area. County funding has contributed to the base budget for the BEDC in 2022. And that is also the plan for 2023. A lot of these projects have been a very heavy lift for our small team. So your partnership and your support have been very significant. We're very delighted to continue working with you and appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot. Oops. Thank you. There was a lot. Sorry, got to remember the mic. Questions or comments from?
No, I think I need some time to digest all of this.
So basically, what is before us is signing the MOU with the BEDC to for the additional $30,000. And you referenced the fact that last year Monroe County provided it was $30,000 to BEDC.
Mhm.
So
and thank you for that.
yeah, what specifically do you feel like that the residents of Monroe County benefited? What benefit did they gain from that $30,000 that would then also perhaps carry into this funding cycle?
Yeah, so I would say the last slide with the summary of benefits is really kind of a breakdown of that. In addition to providing those services for Monroe County government. In other local governments, they may have like a designated person or department that does many of the activities we talked about. And the partnership that we have with the county is to provide many of those services.
Commissioner Thomas? Do you have questions? Comments?
Yeah, we had a chat last week. Thank you for the conversation. Talk through some things and you indicated that the money was already included in your budget for this year, even though we hadn't signed the contract. So that's concerning to me, honestly. I can understand how it happens, but that's just it's a little worrying for me because I don't want to leave you short, but I also don't think it's fair to paint us in the corner either. So, but that's specifically what we're looking at for next, whenever this goes on our agenda, correct?
Yes.
Is that MOU?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll point out that the county council has already approved those funds. But when we did the MOU last year, if my memory serves correctly, we said we wanted it broken out into 2 separate years because we wanted to know what that benefit was going to be to doing this. I guess too, I understand the need for the money. That's not the issue completely for me. But I think that people often forget the interaction that goes on as well, that when we talk about quality of life, well, we look at, and you talked about beautification specifically and parks and things like that. That's part of what government, at least Monroe County, provides. We also provide support for some of the diversity you talked about with the funding that we provide to Stonebelt and to Life Designs. When we talk about mental health, we provide funding to Centerstone and to HealthNet. So I think that we do some of those things that enhance your job as well. The same thing when we talk about recently, there's been a big cry about affordable housing within our community, and government is being asked repeatedly now to help with that in different ways. And so we are considering what we can do using some of the ARPA funds. So I think that while I understand the outreach part that you do, I think some of the things that we do also need to be acknowledged because it makes what you're selling easier in some ways.
Yeah, and if I may, we 100% agree with that. The purpose of the EVP is never to duplicate anything that is already happening. It's rather to help amplify. And actually at our steering committee meeting tomorrow, we will be discussing current initiatives that are being worked on in those areas so that we can make sure they're getting supported, called out. And if additional community resources are needed from the private sector, from grants, et cetera, we can kind of try to amplify the message and say, hey, let's all point in the same direction on those items. And also, if I may, to address the process question that you had as well. So we worked with council. The appropriation, I believe, was approved in fall. And then it was discussed as a part of our budget with executive committee and others at the end of the year. And so that's how it ended up in our plan for this year. If there's something that we should adjust in our process, if this comes up again for 2024, we'd be happy to talk about that.
Thank you. No, thank you.
So when will this be back on our regular agenda? Or when will it be not back on our regular agenda, but on our regular agenda? Mr. Cockrell?
We could put it on next week.
Is that? Okay. All right, then
Thank you.
we'll address this next week then.
And we won't make you do the whole presentation again next week.
We're not gonna put anybody through that. Is there? It's fine. It's fine. I geek out about economic development, but I know that's been a long day, so I really appreciate your time. Are there any questions or anything you'd like me to bring next week that would be useful?
No. Yeah, it has been a long day.
Yeah.
I in looking through your materials, you've gathered a great deal of information in one form or another. I would like to hear something about what happens with that information,
Oh, yes, actually.
but not necessarily right now,
Okay.
maybe next week.
Short answer, it's posted on our website and reported regularly.
Well, I do want to give you some credit too, that as we've been looking at some of the childcare needs, I've been reciting some of the information I've learned through the EVP process about the fact that we could double the number of childcare places that we have available to meet. That's what we need to meet the need, probably locally. And so that's driving some of the decisions that we're making too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. I know it's hard to go last, so.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah.
You get the warm seat award.
Is that opposed to the hot seat?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. And do we have any other items?
You better not. That was sounds like, you have anything, you better not.
Don't have a switch for her chair or something, Okay, well, with that, we'll adjourn this meeting and we will see you next week. Thank you all. Okay, we're looking for an objection.